All right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. If everyone can have a seat, we'd like to start our regular City Council meeting. I appreciate your patience and your willingness to wait for us as we reconvene from closed session. There is nothing to report. And at this point, I want to call the regular City Council meeting to order at 6:20 p.m. on Wednesday, April the 25th. Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Mayor. This meeting of the Elk Grove City Council will be replayed on Metro Cable Channel 14 on Friday, April 27th at 1 p.m. and Tuesday, April 30th at 3 p.m. It is being closed captioned and will be webcast at sacmetrocable.tv. City Council meeting videos are also archived on the city's website at elkgrovecity.org. For members of the audience who may have personal electronic devices, please place them on silent mode during the meeting. Elk Grove City Council welcomes, appreciates, and encourages participation in the City Council meeting. City Council requests that you limit your presentation to 3 minutes per person so that all present will have time to participate. City Council reserves the right to reasonably limit the total time for public comment on any particular noticed agenda item as it may deem necessary. If you wish to address the council during the meeting, please complete one of the blue speaker cards, which can be found at the back of the room, and provide it to the Assistant City Clerk prior to consideration of that agenda item. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Say roll call, please.
For the roll call, Councilmember Nguyen. Councilmember Detrick.
Here.
Councilmember Hume.
Here.
Vice Mayor Suen.
Here.
And Mayor Lee.
Here. And next item is Pledge of Allegiance. I'd like to invite one of the VIPs to volunteer to lead us in pledge, please. Just step on out. Don't be shy. Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And at the beginning of every regular City Council meeting, the council likes to have a moment of silence. So if you can join the council in a moment of silence, please. Thank you very much. Have an agenda in front of me. Got a motion?
Second.
Got a second? All in favor? All right, next item.
For Section 3, the closed session, we have no closed session items, which will take us to Section 4, presentations and announcements, starting with item 4.1, which is a proclamation recognizing the Capital Region Small Business Week.
All right. Member Nguyen.
I believe we do have a few representatives if they want to step forward. I know Scott Leslie, Capital Region Small Business Development Center, and other regional representatives, if you want to come on up.
All right, so, oh wait, does everybody come on up? How about that? And I'll go ahead and read it together. While you're coming up, I'd like to read the whereases. And being that we have, or Capital Region Small Business Week is April 30th to May 4th, 2018, whereas every year since 1963, the President of the United States has issued a proclamation announcing National Small Business Week, which recognizes the critical contributions of America's entrepreneurs and small business owners. I won't go through all the whereases, but I will say, as a small business, there are so many barriers that you have to get through. One, definitely going through all the paperwork, but two, making sure that you make it every day at the end of every day, from staff, from the utilities, from the rent, from all of that. And so I just want to recognize all of you as small business owners and congratulate you for making it through and for being so successful. So on behalf of all of us here in the City Council, now therefore it be resolved that the City Council of the City of Elk Grove does hereby proclaim April 30th through May 4th, 2018 as Capital Region Small Business Week and encourages the residents of our community and the communities across the country to support small businesses and merchants on this week-long series of events and throughout the year. So I hope all of you out there listening support our small businesses and our city because they really do depend on all of us to be able to support them. Congratulations to all of you. I'm going to ask the entire team to come down because I know we're all supportive of our small businesses here in our city. That would be me.
Vertically challenged people are trying
That's okay. I'm good. Okay.
Go this way?
He's talking to her behind you.
Oh, well.
Okay, got everybody here? Here we go. 1, 2, one more. And then Angela wants to.
Thank you.
You guys want to stay down?
I was going to say something in addition, yeah. Just a few more words, not too long. Thank you for recognizing next week as Small Business Week. This Capital Region Small Business Planning Committee has been around for about 3 years, and Elk Grove has been participating since it started. And I want to take a moment to recognize the collaboration of all of the resource partners here today and others that were not able to make it tonight. All of our organizations are committed to the small business community and helping connect businesses with local resources. I wanted to highlight that there will be several events occurring as part of the Capital Region Small Business Week, including one here in Elk Grove. Our event, the Small Business Startup Forum, occurs next Thursday, May 3rd, starting at 9:30 a.m., and will be held at the California North State University Event Center on West Tarrant Drive. The inspiration for this event comes from our Small Business Startup Guide. We will have a panel of experts that will discuss best practices for common issues that small businesses encounter, such as business plans, business organization structure, permits and business licensing, hiring employees, and taxes. Members of the council, I would like to invite you to come check out our event if possible. And for those of you in the audience or watching remotely, you can register for this event by visiting our economic development homepage on the city's website. And there's several other events occurring throughout the week that these business resource partners are hosting. To learn more about these events, go to the Capital Region Small Business Week, and that is the name of the website, capitalregionsmallbusinessweek.org. Thank you.
Okay, go ahead, Vice Mayor.
Okay.
That'll take us on to item 4.2, which is a proclamation recognizing National Volunteer Week.
Okay. Is there somebody come up to greet me? Or no? Come on up.
I think we'll
So while they're walking up, we just heard about small business and the foundation to any good climate for business is safe neighborhoods. And so in recognition of National Volunteer Week, which was April 15th through the 21st, we want to recognize our volunteers in policing, our VIPs, that make our cities safer, putting in their own time and effort. They'll be able to come and check on your home while you're away for vacation, and then help our officers perform their work so they can continue to do policing and investigative work. You guys put in a lot of time on your own to take care of our cities, and on behalf of the city council, the city staff, our officers, all the community residents, we want to express our gratitude and appreciation for all the work that you guys put in. Just real quickly, just so folks understand how much you've been contributing, whereas in 2017, the Volunteers and Police Services donated a total of nearly 11,600 hours of service, documented 451 crime reports, removed 956 illegally posted signs, issued 347 disabled parking enforcement citations, patrolled 695 parks, and provided security vacation checks to nearly 3,600 residents. Incredible, right? Can we have a round of applause for that? That's right. Thank you. And whereas in 2017, the Community Ambassadors were founded as a part of a social action initiative aimed at better connecting the city of Elk Grove and the city Elk Grove Police Department with the communities they serve. The community ambassadors attended dozens of local festivals and events throughout the city, acting as liaisons, helping to create and foster a strong dialogue between the city and community. We've heard about community policing, and not just our officers, but having you out there integrating with our residents ensures that we'll have a safe community for many years to come. And I want to invite the council to come on down to take a picture, because we all want to show our gratitude for this. Thank you.
Just trying to get the group and tighten it up.
Who would I can accept this? Who wants to accept this? Right here? You take, okay, thank you. Come on, we'll stand there together. Stand in the middle. There you go. Mayor, you want to come in?
We're always there, Ma.
Thank you very much. Thanks, everybody.
All right, our next presentation is Mayor's Volunteers Award. Is that right? Okay. First I want to say that there were a number of individuals that were nominated for the various categories, and for the selection committee, it certainly was difficult. But nonetheless, with the members of the committee, we did a lot of juggling and found some appropriate categories to reclassify some of these volunteers. But nonetheless, our much deep appreciation for all of those who continue to volunteer in the community and help make our community a better place. Certainly the recipients tonight are not the only volunteers and are not the only ones that continue to work in our community for the betterment of our community. But at least this opportunity, we get to acknowledge a certain few individuals. The category, the first category is sports and recreation. The winner is Beth Sievers. Beth, are you here? Come on down. And I just want to say, she had 6 nominations from 6 individuals, so it was clear to me that you obviously has made an impact on a number of people in the community. Beth is the co-founder of Running for Reds, a local nonprofit that funds after-school running programs that are inspiring kids to move into life like. She did through running after the death of her son, Red, who passed away due to severe cerebral palsy at the age of 7. She has worked with thousands of adults and youth and students in investing in their health lives and inspires them on a daily basis. Beth, thank you for an amazing for being an amazing role model for many of our community members. Appreciate it. And you're free to say a few words, and I'm going to include the whole city council, so we're just going to go stand down there and take pictures with these wonderful volunteers. How about that? All right.
Wow. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. Oh, thank you.
Congratulations and thank you.
Thank you.
you want to say something?
Great.
Run-In for It was started in honor of my son who passed away, and I used Run-In to get through the grief of losing him. And now we teach many children how to move and have fun and get active. And so Elk Grove is our home, and we are in lots of schools here and look forward to getting those children up and active and moving into life.
Okay, our next winner is no stranger to the community. This is under the Social and Community Services. The nomination was by his beautiful wife, Angela Spees. And the recipient is Kevin Spees. Kevin Spees continually gives to our community and the nation. He served 14 years protecting our country in the military as an active member of the American Legion Post 233. He has volunteered at numerous community events and is a member of many organizations throughout the city, including Laguna Sunrise Rotary, Chamber of Commerce, Arts Advocacy Project, Elk Grove Regional Scholarship Committee, and serves on the City Planning Commission. Thank you, Kevin, for all the work that you do for Elk Grove. Come on up, Kevin. Suck it in. Go ahead. Thank you. What's the matter? Did you get it, Andrew? You?
I can't get one more.
Let's do it. Let's do another one, yeah. Retake.
We know who we gotta make happen, right?
Oh, man, I got it. Yeah, sorry.
Selfie. Okay, thanks. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate the consideration and the honor. And thank you, City Council. I definitely appreciate you. What I have to say is that, first of all, I can't do this. I can't do the things that I do without my beautiful wife, Angela. I'm not the me that I am without the you that you are. So thank you so much. But also, we need to know that none of us do anything alone, and I have a fantastic tribe. I have a fantastic family, and without my mom and my dad who continually support me, business partners in Utah and things like that who help me to do, allow me to do the things that I do, I wouldn't be able to do it without all of you, Rotarians, family or friends. So thank you so much for being here to represent. So thank you.
Our next category is Arts, Culture, and Heritage. The winner is Ray Bayless, and nominated by Evelyn Concilia. Ray is truly a man who gives back to his community. He is a small business owner of Old Town Creations for 32 years. Ray has been an avid participant in the Strauss Festival for 25 years, wearing many hats, some of which are dancer, producer, decorator, hairstylist, costume designer. He is a great supporter and donates to nonprofit organizations, including the Elk Grove Police and of the Watch, Pleasant Grove High School Association, High School Advisory Board of FFA, softball teams, and was the past president of the Chamber of Commerce and Old Town Merchants Association. We thank you, Ray, for your contributions to arts, culture, and heritage of Elk Grove. Congratulations, Ray. You're shy? You know, that in itself is a mark of a true volunteer who comes in the middle of the night and does wonderful work and disappears. Thank you, Ray, again. Appreciate it. Our next category is Residents, Neighborhood, and Community Groups. The winner is Ryan Allen. Nominated by Juan Fernandez, Ryan Allen volunteers every morning for crossing guard traffic duty at Elk Grove Elementary School as part of the Watchdogs program. He is a great example of a community ambassador who gives his time to ensure that students are safe in getting to school. Thank you, Mr. Allen. Come on down. Our next category is Young Volunteer of the Year. The winner is John Phillips, nominated by Don Phillips. John just celebrated his 21st birthday on March the 26th, and 4 years since his diagnosis of ITP, immune, and I can't pronounce this word. You're going to have to help me pronounce this word.
Thrombocytopenic purpura.
Yeah, that's the reason why I didn't go to medical school. No, that's why I didn't go to medical school. So he has suffered tremendously giving up wrestling, his dream of going into the military, and he lost the ease he had with academics and studying. He has become an advocate for the people with his disease after learning as much about it as he could and starting a support group. He's active with Blood Source and has been to countless blood drives, thanking people for donating platelets, whole blood, or plasma, and informing them about ITP, and is now the chairperson for blood drives at Columbus River College. He plans to become a hematologist so that he can ease people through the difficult journey that ITP has given him. John has volunteered at Project Right since high school, and he has well over 200 hours of service with them. John is a star to all who meet him, and we know will continue to do great things in our community. Congratulations, John.
So when I go to blood drives, sorry, for a lot of people, donating blood is just, there's not a connection that I can help bring them. Because I share my story and tell them about this great need for blood to help save people's lives. And the looks on their faces when they realize that the difference they're making is so important, it makes it all worth it. Thank you.
Do we have a representative from, let me start with the category. This is service organization and groups, Harriet Eddy Middle School, National Junior Honor Society. We don't have anyone here from Harriet Eddy, and I can tell you the reason why, because tonight they actually have an event with the Harriet Eddy School National Junior Honor Society there. But Mark Benson is the principal who nominated the school. Now, Harriet Eddy Middle School National Honor Society is our winner in the category of service organization groups. They continuously collect donations for monetary and in-kind items such as clothing, food cards, pet care items for various organizations in the community. The list of activities they participate and continue to do is pretty extensive. This program has earned the National Honor Society of the Year award for this work at their school. We are proud of them and their service to the Elk Grove community. And I have a vested interest there, so I'd be happy to deliver that award there. So thank you, everyone. All right, next item, please.
Take us to item 4.4, the Trails Committee Annual Update to the City Council.
We'll go with this one. Good evening, Mayor Lee and council members. My name is Mark Mendenhall, and thank you for having us. I'm the chairman of the Trails Committee this year. This is our committee, same as last year. Thank you. Tonight we have Sharon and Erica with us. Yeah. This is what we do, provide input, comments, and most importantly, vision, and that's what I'm going to work on tonight. But first, we'll take a little review. Big item last year, we opened the Camden Spur grand opening. That's a trail that goes from Bond Road all the way up to almost Sheldon, across Laguna Creek. We had to build a bridge. There's a picture of it. There's a picture of the Bond Road entrance and the connection at the end of the Camden Trail. We opened a small portion of Franklin Creek at Gilliam Drive. This is a before and after picture. We had a little rain, so you can see the weeds kind of jumped up there before I got there with the camera, but the trail's in place. What it did is connected up a small piece to, I believe it's Stevenson Park, down to Gilliam Street, and then you cross the bridge and you're into the Franklin Creek trail system. Whoops. We put some green bike lanes on the Laguna Boulevard as a test case over the railroad tracks. You can see the before and after pictures there. Much improved. I think it will help greatly with the safety for cyclists. Ryan Chapman, our traffic engineer, tells me that he's working on funding and to get a project going to do the same thing down in front of Dutch Brothers. He's also looking at East Stockton Boulevard. This is where the picture is there, where you turn right to get onto the freeway, and the East Stockton Boulevards are kind of zipping through the bike lanes, and you kind of get lost there. So he's working on that as well. We put safety enhanced pedestrian crossings all over town. We've got talking buttons, and in cases of uncontrolled intersections, we put in some flashing lights there in Old Town. This particular one is on Whitelock Parkway. CCSD has provided some needed concrete repairs in the Camden neighborhood. I happened to be riding through that day, and lo and behold, there they were pouring concrete. We reviewed and commented on the south sector of the Civic Center on Lots Parkway. AmGen Tour of California was impressed with our support last year for the women's race. This year we are hosting both the men's Stage 5 finish and the start and finish of the women's race, both on May 17th. As a nice perk, as Trails Committee Chairman, I did the Elk Grove segment on both of the official AmGen promotional videos, and we are looking for volunteers to help on the 17th. You can go to the city website to help. Coming this summer, big news for this summer, we are on track to begin construction of the Lower Laguna Creek Wetlands Trail. We call it the Ryland Trail. The trail will cross Bighorn Boulevard and continue south, continue to the Sacramento Trail System to the north. This is an extensive project located northwest section of the city, placing trails through protected wetlands extending to north to Laguna Creek. We commented on Oasis Park construction, which is due to be just south of Whitelock Parkway. There's a trail running, it's horizontal in this picture, but it's red. There's a trail running right through the park, and that connects to the crosswalk that I showed you on Whitelock, and will continue down to all of the housing projects south of Whitelock. Last year I talked about fitness loops. I think there were some comments about that. And I'm happy to report that we're moving along a little slowly, but towards a pilot loop on the east side looking something like this. The idea is to have a marked loop system that can be used as a safe fitness path off the busy streets and also offer some points of interest along the way. This particular one's on the east side. That is to be the pilot one. It won't be exactly this path, but goes through Old Town, follows Laguna Creek, goes all over. This is one of my standard bike routes myself. These are the sample signs and directional markings. The one in the center is a bicycle sprocket with an arrow and a number for the loop. The plan is to expand that throughout the city and have the loops kind of chained together so you can follow a path, and it'll almost be like a map that you'll be able to use. Our committee tweaked our priorities a little this year. Year for major project. First, we would be the completion of the Laguna Creek connectors at the East Lawn Cemetery, continuing across State Route 99 and along the connector to the Lewis Stein and Bruceville Roads in Sacramento City. This is an aerial view of the East Lawn and State Route 99 sections. The yellow is existing trails. The red is the East Long segment. Kevin tells me it's currently in environmental, and the orange is the crossing on 99 with a feasibility study completed. And just to the west of the East Lawn State Route 99 crossing is the Lewis Stein to Bruceville Road connector, which is starting design and environmental this summer. These 3 projects are moving along and are currently seeking grant funding. Next, we think a trail on Strawberry Creek in the Calvine area from Monterey Trail High School to Jones Park would greatly benefit the neighborhood. A short trek on residential streets south from Jones Park connects to the Camden Trails network. There is planning and funding included in next year's budget. Planning, funding included in next year's budget. And putting a hard surface on Elk Grove Creek Trail from Emerald Vista to Elk Grove Florin is long overdue, with hopes of an eventual continuation to Falcon Meadow Drive. Future projects on the horizon would be 3 connectors to the Power Line Trail north and south, generally following Waterman Road. This will provide access to Laguna Creek Trail, our major artery. Also note the new housing projects at Grant Line and Waterman are currently have no trail connectivity to the rest of the city. This othermost new connector would look something like this. Yellow is existing, red is planned. You can see the new houses being built down in the bottom down there. They have no connection to the city whatsoever. And while we're connecting up the south area, there is a wonderful opportunity to take the Elk Grove Creek Trail all the way to Grant Line and the Power Line Trail. That would look something like this. It's down in the bottom of your screen in red. To get there, we need to cross the railroad tracks. Here's the current situation. We can do it with enough support. And the completed connections would look something like this. And one more item for consideration. This is kind of my harebrained idea. And for consideration, there is a 350-yard section of casually established trail connecting Oneto Park to Laguna Springs Drive, right over here by the state buildings, that needs to be made into a real trail. Every day, dozens of state employees walk and enjoy our Elk Grove Creek trails in the Longleaf vicinity. This trail segment would provide a great loop for them and everyone else using the trails. I personally think it would be appropriate for the owners of the state buildings to contribute to or completely fund the project. The completed loop would look something like this. Red is proposed, yellow is existing. The new trail at White Lock and Lots Parkway, which was developer installed, is waiting for the extension into the Elk Grove Park on White Lock State Route 99 interchange project, which is moving along. Most connector projects are CIPs. Developers contribute both physical trails within their projects and to additional city funds to build the trails network. These funds are not enough to build our trails. Grants, federal, state, and regional, are leveraged with city matching funds to advance trail priorities. We need to make sure staff has adequate support to write and submit grant applications to help these projects move forward. Creating more and safer bikeways is always a priority, and encouraging people to use them is always a challenge, but an enjoyable one. I'm happy to report from my observations the presence of all of this has been reduced in the city. Thank you. And the sheep and goat posses are doing a great job too. So this is the multi-year vision we need to support and move forward. On a closing note, last year I showed you our turtle colony, which has grown a lot, and I now report last year we had 25 plus wood ducks joining the turtles along the creek this year, and I even saw several imperial ducks, which are native to China, last fall. And thank you. Any comments?
Any comments, questions? Go ahead, Councilman.
So I have also noticed the turtles and the wood ducks and the imperial ducks. I think
You
someone
saw the
referred to them
imperials
as
too? Great.
Mandarin or
Well, if you query Mandarin on the internet, you Google it, you end up with a Chinese dish.
That's right, yeah. Which doesn't bode well for the Ducks.
So, no. So Imperial Ducks is what I'm staying with, so.
I just wanted to thank you. I was down in San Diego recently, and they have signs up that they call PB Pathway, and essentially is doing that's directing people that this is a safer, it's still, on road, but it's a safer alternative to riding some of the major thoroughfares. And so I'm really excited to see that program come to fruition and give people ways to get places without being on the heavily trafficked streets.
If you know the routes, you can get all over this city. I do every day, do my errands, and you don't need to go on Laguna or Elk Grove Boulevard. You
When I
cross
was-
them, but you don't need to go on them.
When I was a kid, I would often beat people to places because they were in their car, I was on my bike, and I knew the
Yep.
back roads how to get
Yep,
there.
yep.
Okay, Vice Mayor?
Mark, just want to thank you and the committee for all the work that you do. Hopefully, you guys will stick around. We got an item coming up that potentially could allow for folks to enjoy, more folks to enjoy these trails.
Okay.
Definitely want to see these connected and future connections brought to fruition. So, thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Okay.
And Mark, thanks for you and Sharon and your team coming in tonight.
Sure.
What you guys do is a great quality of life issue. And even for me personally, the opening of the Camden Spur Bridge and the trails and making that conductivity between Bond and Sheldon obviously
huge.
greatly impacts the people in the various Camden subdivisions. But everybody to the north now can enjoy that, which my property's to the north off of Sheldon. So I use that for walking, jogging, cycling.
Yeah.
And it's a treat. We even had family from out of town and took a nice walk all the way over to Bond, and it's a beautiful addition.
Thank you. Thanks to the city. That's good.
Go ahead.
I echo what everybody said, but I also want to say that I'm fortunate enough to have my backyard face to Franklin Creek and Gilliam Drive Extension, and it's been wonderful to see how it's being so popularly used from children, biking, skating, walking, and I've just really enjoyed that. That has been such a huge plus in that district, but also the enhanced pedestrian crossing. I remember when driving and the sun hits your eyes at a certain point, and when people drive, literally, you don't see it until you get right there. And so this pedestrian enhanced crossing that has been installed has done such wonders where you can see the flashing from, way far behind. So thank you for everything that both you and Ms. Anderson has done in the community.
It's the city that does the work. We
I
just,
know,
we
but-
just point the fingers,
Yeah, we get a lot of fingers pointed at us.
Well, I just want to thank you, Mark. I know that you guys work really hard and making sure the dream comes true and connecting all the trails. So, I think it's pretty clear that we're behind the Trails Committee in terms of your effort. So just let us know. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we have Sharon Anderson on deck.
I'm going to say something. Well, number one, I just want to congratulate Mark for giving a very in-depth, wonky presentation, not quite the way that Jason gave one 2 weeks ago, but definitely in-depth and something that we need. But also to anybody who's watching the broadcast and is curious about how to report issues with respect to trails and what their dreams and desires are, send a note to askelkgrove@elkgrovecity.org. It's okay to do it that way if you don't know how to get a hold of any of us. We like hearing all the ideas of what could come next because essentially the city, as I know it, wants to build a regional trails system. We want to be economic leaders. We want to have sustainable development. We want to draw people into the community. And what better way to do it than with community-based trails and a system that links up regionally with other jurisdictions. And so just continue to support, continue to find that funding. We'll work with you. We'll support grant dollars. I won't pay for it. I mean, when you look for grants, it is my money. So at the end of the day, we really need that kind of support to make Elk Grove great.
Thanks, Sharon.
Thank you, ma'am. Next item is public comment. First speaker we have in line is Irina Price and Mac Worthy. Are they here? Going once, twice. There they are.
I think they're making the approach.
Come on down.
Good evening. I was gonna read a timeline of what's happened since the last time I was here, 2 weeks ago. Instead, I wanna read you the mold report that I just got today, because absolutely nothing has happened since the last time I was here except for this mold report, which was done on the 16th of April. During a visual inspection, mold growth was observed at the bottom of the wall in the water heater closet, water damage was observed on the carpet tract at the base of the south wall of the living room. Water stain was observed on the ceiling and the east wall of the laundry room. Recommendations. The contractor shall maintain strict worker protection procedures, including but not limited to the use of disposable suits, rubber gloves, goggles, and NIOSH approved respirators. Now, this is what you guys gave me saying what the workers that's only coming in to remove the mold from my home needs. We've been in here since January. I've told you since February what's been happening in my home. And now I get this. Not only do I find out you want your worker to be more protected than the tenants who's living in there and sick from mold, now I find out more than one room in my home has mold. Another issue that I have, I've been asking for you guys to issue an order for them to go and take care of this problem, for the owners to be accountable for the mold that was not caused by me. And I couldn't get it until today. My flood in my unit happened on January the 15th, 2018. But yet this report says the violation date was April the 16th. And you guys gave them until May the 25th to get this taken care of. Why so long for them to get it taken care of? Are you guys gonna make sure that we're moved out of here since your own worker needs this much protection? That's the question I need to know and have the answer to. Not to mention, when I came here last and I talked about these problems and I asked you, please get in contact with the management company, Mr. Shane Diller told me on the 18th of April, one more minute.
Go ahead, please.
On the 18th of April, that they're gonna come out, on the 14th of April, which was Friday, that you guys were gonna come to my unit, go to other units in my building, and you were gonna do inspections to find out what other units have the same defects, molds, flood issues, wire, whatever the problem is, you were gonna check it out. But then I find out you also told management you were coming. So what I've observed since you've told management that day, did I leave that? I think I left the paper at my table, but I'll be glad to give you the paper that management sent out to us on April the 20th, letting us know that you were coming, letting us know that we need to make sure, oh yes, he brought it, thank you. Letting us know that we need to make sure we tell them what's wrong before you get here. How are you gonna find out what's really happening? Who's not doing their job if you warn them before you come? They even gone as so far as to tell us what we need to clean and how we need to polish up the wood in our house and polish up everything to make it look good for you guys to come. I complained about my tenant in unit 107. Our homes are back to back. They have mold on their wall that was painted over. Well, guess what? For the last week, they have a brand new wall. Brand new. So when you come out, you won't even see the mold on her wall, whether you test it or not. They've been working all around the unit for a whole week, getting ready for you guys to come. How are you actually going to make sure people are safe if you warn the people that you're coming, and then they make everything better by the time they got there? My carpet have been the same. SHAR said my carpet was fine and they passed it. But here go another person that says, we see the water damage that I've complained about. We see the mold at the bottom of your floor that I've complained about. And here we are. This is April. This is April, and now you guys sent me a paper saying it just happened April the 16th. I need an amendment to this documentation that you gave me. It is not correct. We're not going to leave the date as April 16th. It needs to go right back until the day of the flood. Or if you want to go back to the day I reported my mold report, which was on February the 13th, then that'll be fine. But this part is not acceptable at all. And it's wrong. It's wrong. I feel so disenfranchised right now, and I never thought I would feel this way, for people to just purposely go around and do everything else but worry about the tenant. I'm here in front of you guys again. Mayor, thank you so much for reaching out, and at least reaching out to me personally. That meant a lot, but stuff still haven't been done since you've reached out to me. Just so you know, it has not. I don't care what nobody say. It has not, except for this report. That's all.
Okay.
I hope something is done, because this is a shame. I shouldn't have to keep
Thank you,
coming
ma'am.
back.
If you can wrap it up, yeah. Shane, I know you've been working, you want to give us a quick report? Ma'am and sir, you can have a seat. Yeah.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. Shane Diller, Assistant Director of Development Services. Since the last visit of Ms. Price to the council, we did speak after the council meeting that evening, and on the 14th, I did tell her that both SHRA and the city would be out to perform inspections the 17th and the 16th and the 17th of April. SHRA's inspection passed their standards. Their standards are a little different than the city's standards because we enforce to the state and local housing codes. Our inspection was specifically focused on Ms. Price's mold complaint, and the inspector on the 16th did find that there was mold in violation of the state code and gave us parameters to require remediation with. We got that report on the 19th, and we met Monday and today to line out with code enforcement in the city attorney's office exactly how that notice should read and what steps we should take there, and those notices were issued earlier today. We do have the requirement in the state housing code that the remediation of housing code violations be given 30 days to accomplish. There's also a reasonableness standard we have to hold that somebody would be able to accomplish what we're asking within the time we're asking it, and we feel like 30 days is also reasonable in addition to the state law requirement on that front. We do still intend to perform and have it scheduled for May 2nd to go out and do a larger audit of the units. We have been out to units other than Ms. Price's in the complex since her report to check on issues and various things, but the large complex-wide sweep is something that, A, we're required to coordinate with the owner. We can't just march onto private property and start poking around without some sort of warning and permission unless we have a warrant from a judge. And we also feel it's important to provide them a list of what we're looking for. Our goal in the end is that things be corrected and things be cleaned up. And if it gets accomplished that things are corrected and cleaned up through providing the property management folks with a checklist of things that need to be handled, whether they accomplish it before our arrival or after we get there and require it, is not as important to us as that it be cleaned up in the first place. The issue of the notice date and the violation date on the notice ties to the 16th of April, specifically because we're required on that notice to issue and cite the date that we in fact confirmed there was a violation. That was April 16th. We had made prior visits in February and March to the apartment, and our moisture meters did not detect any moisture. And we had two competing mold reports, one from Ms. Price and one from the property management folks, that said in one report that there was mold and in another report that there was not mold, which is why we took kind of an unprecedented step in ordering our own mold report. We've never done that before in a housing case. And rather than continue to put it back on the property management folks and the tenant to provide additional reports or additional information to clarify it, we just took the step of getting our own consultant to do the test and to provide a report. So we're tied to that April 16th date because that's the date that we actually confirmed that the mold violation did exist. We're not saying in that date or in that report that the mold was not there prior to, or all the way back to the January date that the incident may have occurred, but that's the date that we, the city, documented that the violation did exist for legal purposes, really, and are moving forward with ordering remediation and enforcement. Sorry, I probably talked longer than you were expecting.
Okay,
Mr. Mayor,
go ahead.
quick question. Shane, in your most recent email update on this issue, you mentioned that Ms. Price's carpet is going to be replaced. Do we have a schedule on when that is going to happen?
We're told it's going to happen on May 1st.
May 1st?
Yes, we're attempting right now to coordinate with the property management folks so that perhaps some of the remediation required in the mold report and the carpet replacement stuff can be done in tandem because they both require removal of property from the unit and the cleaning and sanitizing of that property. So we're hoping that they can coordinate that in that short time.
And then in that same email, you had mentioned that SHRA had deemed that her voucher was portable, that she could move with it.
It is both portable, yes, and it's currently not at risk of being of ending at the ridge because of the passing of the SHRA.
Okay, and so is there another unit at the ridge that would be available to Ms. Price to move into, either at least while this work is being done, or if she so chooses to?
I can't speak to that off the top of my head. Sarah Bontrager has been more directly in contact with the management at the ridge on that side, and that's something that they were looking at and working on. I don't know that they've identified one yet, either for temporarily or maybe a permanent move. I haven't heard that one way or the other yet.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks, Shane. So that gives some clarity as to why the report's dated and such. I'm wondering what conversations have we been having with the property manager, and what's the property manager going to do to remedy things?
The property manager at this point has done a number of things that our report shows were inadequate. I don't want to say, here that they're not trying and they're not working towards a solution, but obviously our report from the 16th shows that there's much more that needs to be done. In addition to replacing the carpet, which wasn't required in our report and wasn't required in SHRA's report, we know we're going to hold them to the various components of our report for the removal of sheetrock. In our report, it would be a pulling back and treatment of carpet, but if the carpet's going to be replaced, that'll be a moot point. And there's a number of other remediation efforts that have to be undertaken. The Ridge has done everything from blowing fans to dry areas to repairing the original leak that was causing the issue, and done a number of things. We don't know for a fact that any of that is satisfactory yet. When our remediation requirements are done, we go back in then for a follow-up test and inspection and confirm that in fact the unit is both compliant with all the other standards of the housing code and compliant with the mold section of that code.
What's your sense in terms of their level of cooperation and their proactiveness in moving things ahead?
Well, I would say that I guess I'm disappointed that our mold report found mold in the apartment and remediation required when their report found none. And I can't, and I was explaining to Ms. Price earlier in an email, I can't speak to why that would be done, why their report would be cleared. Obviously, they haven't done everything that's required to correct that issue. So I wouldn't say that they've been extremely proactive and jumped on and handled all of the issues. There's certainly issues they haven't addressed, because that's why we continue to be involved at this point.
Yeah, I mean, that's the sense I'm getting, so, I mean, I would encourage if you could relay a message from me. I don't know if my council members would agree, but we're disappointed about this is still occurring and the severity of these things. So,
Certainly.
thank you.
Okay, Councilman Detrick.
Yeah, Shane, I'm extremely disappointed with how this is, not from our team's aspect, but from the management team is ridiculous. And Ms. Price, I know you and I have communicated with a few emails. I thank you for the continued communication, as well as coming in here 2 weeks ago and coming in here today to give us an update from your point of view. And Shane has been very diligent about giving us, at least weekly, if not more often than that, a report of each phase of everything that's going on. And I think he spoke very well on what the legal timeframes. When they give a date projected to be completed, that's the date to be completed. Doesn't mean they can't do the work before that. And the goal is to try to move that date up. It's basically a month out or sooner is the goal. And I really believe, you got to get contractors on board and scheduling and everything else. And I know yesterday's not fast enough for you, and I totally understand if I was in your shoes. But we really, really are trying to work with, it's a third-party organization to us. It's not our city staff that's going to be doing any of this work. This is all contractors through third parties. So, and a lot of the information you read in the report is, once they found it, that's the requirements that, by law, that workers have to be protected by. Doesn't mean that you're not to be protected. We're not taking any of this lightly. We're definitely taking it to heart.
Member Nguyen.
Thank you, sir. So we spoke this morning, and I appreciate you coming out here again to share your frustration and your disappointment in this process. And Shane and I also spoke, and I think one of the things you talked about is that it's not just us, but it's SHRA, it's the city and the property manager. And one of the things that we spoke about this morning is that things aren't consistent, right? And that one is saying other things than the other, meaning we're saying one thing, SHRA is saying the other, SHRA is saying something else, and the property manager is saying something else. And so we talked about getting everybody in the room and making sure that we're all hearing the same thing and doing the same thing. And so I did relay that to Shane, and I got from you some days and times that you're available so that we can schedule that to make sure that this moves forward and that we're all on the same page. So I do want to update all of you on that.
Perfect.
Excellent. Yeah, Shane, is there anything we can do to help expedite this, push it along the ways, especially with the property owner? I have a strange feeling they're the ones who are dragging their feet.
We're sort of in a position now where we have to let the compliance period run. We don't expect that they'll take the full 30 days. If they do, then there's financial disincentives, if you will, in the ways of fees and fines that the city begins to assess. There's other actions we can step in with our own contractors and perform abatement work to make corrections that they won't. But we're required to allow them to perform the corrections under that timeline that the state housing code requires.
Okay, excellent. I appreciate the regular updates, and I would encourage you to continue to give Ms. Price a regular update as well.
Certainly.
There's a lot of moving parts, and I hear completely what you're saying, and I feel for you. Your health and safety is important to me. So, can continue to work and continue to keep me informed as well. Thank you, Ms. Price. Sure. Yeah, if you could make it brief, please. Go ahead and step on up, please, to the microphone.
Mr. Diller was just saying how SHRA inspection passed, but actually it passed because they brought a different inspector that would pass the unit. It was not the same inspector that's been coming for the last 4 years that said the carpet needed to be changed. It was somebody completely different, and I've gone to SHRA regarding that, because if there wasn't a problem, why would you change the inspector to say that everything is okay? And and now the report says different. And I do have the documentation of the 2 failed units that did say the carpet needed to be changed because of that issue. And I did provide the mold report from the management, their documentation that said you have mold in your unit twice. So it wasn't that my report said one thing and management said a different, because on just March the 19th, their report said black mold. So I just wanted to make sure I cleared that up. It wasn't a difference. Both parties said it was mold, but the problem is, with both parties saying it was mold, the management owners is the one who's not doing anything about knowing that it's been mold since February. So thank you for listening.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. Appreciate it.
Mayor, thanks for reaching out to her. And correct those dates of the time that this happened up to, from.
Yeah, if you can do me a favor and provide those accurate dates with Shane, so that can be all
correct those
sorted out.
dates. But what people, this is not y'all's problem. This is the city of Sacramento. This is all right. That's whose problem this is. And it's critical. We identified 2 more sets of units in this area that have problems. Identified that. And people, we don't know whether you appoint the people on the commission or not, but that is a disgrace. When a man sit on a commission and can't even read a blueprint, what's he there for? Pitiful people. But anyway, what is, but this will go further than this, because I won't stop. This here, people, I'm an expert at cleaning. 44 years I ran a janitorial service in Sacramento. From 6th grade to my 10th grade year, I had the responsibility for physical to wash up a milk room, 2 air milkers, put them in a sterilizer, and go to school. I know what cleaning is. I wouldn't have wrote this out to a dog. How many of you all polished your brass yesterday? How many of you all, I lay in the hospital over here in Mercy Hospital and look up there to Duck Sky, and I mentioned to them. You got people walk around here, and I see dust. OSHA was the investigator. I cleaned warehouses for the government. I done first clean jobs for finance, chemical construction. Now, people, it's pitiful. It's pitiful to ask the person to do this before. It makes me think about when I worked a summer job for Bud Kema, Grand School District. When Bud coming, no, we grew up in South Carolina. When the boss come, he helped work. Sit down and relax. Let's talk. You don't do nothing extra because you go and do your business, and I'll finish my assignment. This is what this is about, people. But this here is to a tenant. How many of you all mop your kitchen before you went to work today? How many of you all clean your fridge out? How many of you took the drip pan off where you're cooking? People, this is a disgrace. Who are you trying to intimidate? You all should have signed up on this before it went out. Because I'm going to take this all the way to Washington, D.C. This is a disgrace. This is a disgrace, people. So whatever you got to do, do it. Just like you say, the repair people. People, I helped clean out asbestos, and I never wore a mask. I cleaned bathrooms, I never cleaned the glove. Ammonia, Pine Sol, and Ajax. I don't have a bug on me nowhere for 44 years. By the time you put a glove on, I could have put the water together and mopped the bathroom. See, people, you're not going to experts.
So, Mr. Worthy, if you can wrap it up, please. If you can finish up, please.
Yeah, but what I'm saying, these things here, you're going to have to clean up, and you're going to have to do something, because I got to get this to Washington, D.C. to her.
Yeah, and again, I encourage you to work with Mr. Dillard. He's our point person. He's the one that's going to be able to sort all this out for you.
Yeah.
We just don't have the time to do it all in one night. And
But,
thank you for your update, your report. I
realize
appreciate
you
it.
can't do it all one night, but you got to stay on top of people that you have doing the job, too far as you can. The city, the county of Sacramento control this. You can't.
Sure, and I think that's part of the confusion here, sir.
Somebody dropping the ball, but no, you got to do it.
I hear you,
got to
but
call on the city of Sacramento
again,
to let you run
sir,
the city.
Thank you for providing us this information. Our next speaker is Vanessa Beaker, please. Following Vanessa is Amr Shagil.
Hi, my name is Vanessa. This is my son, John. My son, John, has nonverbal autism, and I started a nonprofit called the Fly Brave Foundation. And I just wanted to stand in front of you today to thank you because we just finished up a pilot fitness program with Elk Grove Police with the chief of police and several officers. And what we did was we brought the autism families here in Elk Grove together with the police department to work together. So the families could get to know them and they could get to know the different levels of the spectrum. So if you look at my son John, you wouldn't assume automatically that he has autism. It's an invisible disability. However, he is nonverbal and he wears his headphones because he has sensory issues. So the officers were able to work out with John and other families like that. And I want to personally thank Councilmember Detrick, Steve Detrick, because I approached him. He was emceeing at a special needs talent show, and I approached him with this idea, and he met with me. And when I discussed the plan with him, he was on board and went to the chief of police. I believe he emailed you as well. And because you said yes and you welcomed this pilot program, these families were able to benefit. And the story has made nationwide news. We have law enforcement agencies from Boston, Houston, San Diego, New York calling, wondering how we put this Fly Fit together. What a great idea to get the community and the officers involved. So I just want to say thank you so much and just meet you. And our adults created something for the chief and all of the officers. Actually, I want to thank the chief and the captains, Captain Albright and Solomon, the detectives, Jason DeBolt and Albert Franco, officers Brian George, Jose Ramirez, Gus Aguilar, CSI Iris Ott, and CSO Courtney Adams. They were consistent at all 10 sessions we held Wednesday and Saturday nights, and Jason Jimenez and the chief and Detective Franco were there every single session working out with 2 or 3 kids, so we're so grateful for that. And our adults created a little something for the chief to hang in the police office. They wrapped it themselves, so. We say if you can't make it right, make it rustic, so that's probably what the wrapping's about right there, so.
Open it later?
You can open it whenever you want, yeah. So I just want to say thank you so much. Can I get my phone?
You know, I've always said that our law enforcement officers are more than just a hook 'em or book 'em type. This just goes to show how terrific they are. It's beautiful.
And I would like, many of these participants performed in their first talent show, Fly Braves Got Talent, last Saturday. And Councilmember Dietrich came and sat front row and supported them in that, and as well as Jason Jimenez. And it made a huge impact that you guys came to support them on in their talent show. So thank you for that as well. Oh, would you guys want to take a picture with us?
Sure. Absolutely.
Okay.
Let's hear it for the chief, too.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Nice to meet you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, audience. Thank you so much.
Vanessa and John, before you leave, since you're now part of the city family, I'm going to give you a official city pin.
Wonderful, yay, thank you. I'll wear it with pride. John. Aw, John loves the chief, they run together. John runs marathons like the chief, so.
Yeah, he runs much faster than I do.
He runs a 5-minute mile.
John, can I put this
He's
on?
going to Boston next year.
Wow.
Can I put this on?
Thank you again, thank you. Aw, thank you so much.
Hey, before you leave, people have to understand the energy that this woman has is incredible, and what she's been able to do, not only for John, but for hundreds of kids around the Sacramento region, and to reach into Elk Grove. Chief, I'm phenomenal that was able to connect you and Vanessa to make this happen, and I think it's fantastic for the young men and women with autism, but it's also fantastic for the police department and then all the individuals that you've touched. Thank you for all that you do. Thanks.
All right, next speaker is Amr Shergill. Following Amr is Judy Tafoya.
Good evening, Council. Just before I get started, I distributed 3 charts and provided to the clerk. Would it be okay to put that on the screen so we can follow along together? I was told to ask y'all.
Can you pull the microphone towards you? The other one? There you go.
So I submitted 3 charts. It was distributed to y'all. I wanted your permission to
Brenda, can you help
put them
him?
on the screens.
Or Jason? Thank you.
All right.
Just arrow key down. That should be the first one.
Good evening, Council. Thank you for your patience. My name's Amr Shergill, Elk Grove, father of 3. Before we begin, please, I want to thank you all for the hours you put in today. We've seen a lot of volunteers who are doing fantastic work in Elk Grove, and I know you all put in a ton of hours also, and you're not getting an award tonight, but thank you for all that you do for Elk Grove. I know that sometimes we come out here talking about different issues, but I don't want that to get in the way of the fact that I know you work very hard at the jobs you do. But today I want to talk about the city's violation of civil rights of people of color in Elk Grove under the California Voter Rights Act. Last time we came and I asked you to do some homework, to do some simple math, to look at the underlying data, which is going to decide whether the city of Elk Grove pays $4 to $7 million in a verdict. And it's my understanding that that hasn't been done yet. And in conversations with staff and council, I've offered to go through the data, and I haven't been taken up on that yet by a council member. But what's also disturbing is that it's my understanding that we haven't gone to the Palmdale decision, which is controlling authority, gotten the data from that, looked at it to see whether that data, which cost Palmdale, the city of Palmdale, $7 million, looks like our data, to see whether it would also cost us $7 million. So I've actually done that work for you. I haven't provided everything, but the first item is the chart. This is the chart from the City of Palmdale case. What it shows is on the y-axis, you have voter support for a candidate. On the x-axis is the percentage of minorities in a precinct. And as you can see, as the minority population goes up, this person of color's support also goes up. So there's a number of charts in that case. They put all those charts together, and the court determines, yes, race is a factor, and because of that, the city of Palmdale owes $7 million and has to go to by district. We had an example in locally here in Washington Unified School District. They were given a demand, which I've shared with you all. They had a very similar graph, which was provided to the Washington Unified School District, showed the same thing, where populations of color increase, voter support for candidates of color also increases. That's race is a factor in voting, and because of that, Washington Unified said, you know, we don't want to litigate, we don't want to spend millions of dollars, let's check the data ourselves. They did that, and they're switching to a by district, and that's just up the road here. Finally, this is the data for the city of Elk Grove. This is the chart for the city of Elk Grove. On the y-axis, it shows support for candidates of color. On the x-axis shows percentage of populations of color in precincts. So this is 60% of all of the voters in Elk Grove. I want to thank the clerk for providing that data. That's the same data which was given to you at the last presentation. I'm going to go over just a couple of seconds, a little bit on my time. It's the same data which you were provided. I've reformatted that in the type of presentation that the court will get in this case to determine whether race is a factor in Elk Grove and whether we will pay $7 million. What I'm saying is, don't spend the money on hundreds of thousands of dollars on experts. This stuff is not difficult to do. You can actually do it yourself. If you want to sit down with me, I will step through it. It's not complicated math, it's high school math. And this chart shows exactly the same things Washington Unified looked at, same thing that Palmdale looked at, that race is a factor. Doesn't mean it's racism. It just means that we need to go to by-district voting if we don't want to pay $7 million. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Next speaker is Judy Tafoya.
I want to chime in on other comments this evening about thanking this council for being so responsive to the needs of our community. Maybe we don't always get the answers we want or within the time frame we want, but there's certainly no one that can fault any individual or the group as a whole for not caring and paying attention. And thank you for that. I'm here very briefly. You've got a lot of work to do. I won't take a lot of time, but I'm here on behalf of the Arts Advocacy Project to thank this council for its support of the inaugural ArtSpeed event. It was great. We didn't accomplish everything we wanted to, and we learned a lot of hard lessons. But I can say almost everywhere I go, people say it was great. I had no idea that there was so much art here in our own community and that there was so much different kinds of art than we were aware of. So I'm happy to report to you that having survived the labor pains of the first ArtSpeed, the board has decided they will continue the momentum that you helped us build, and there will be an ArtSpeed next year.
Great.
All right.
That's terrific.
So we want to thank the council again for the tremendous boost of proclaiming March as the first Arts Advocacy Month in Elk Grove. You'll be interested to know that there was so much response from the different producers and presenters in our community that our schedule actually extended into April and finished. We started out with a wonderful Visions event. Pat was our auctioneer. He did a great job, and we hope you'll come back for us next year. Darren chaired the event, and we went through a wonderful presentation by our own City Arts Commission. They did a wonderful Broadway review called Lullaby Broadway. We had an amazing art show called Extravaganza, I think the finest one we've ever had in Elk Grove, and many, many special events that occurred all month that we were very, very proud to be associated with. And thank you so much, all of you. At Darren's behest, the council produced the proclamation, and you were all there to present it at Vision. It meant a lot to us. I just want to mention that none of these kinds of things happen without tremendous help from a lot of places and a lot of people doing large and big tasks. But I wanted to thank the sponsors who also provided not only in-kind services, they provided, I'm sorry, I'll be quick.
Go ahead, finish up.
But they provided volunteer leaders as well who actually worked as a task force to plan and build the ArtSpeed calendar. And they included Bonnie Cooper, representing the Elk Grove Fine Arts Center, Deborah George, representing the Elk Grove Unified School District, and who inspired that wonderful murals project, Walls Out Loud, that Stephanie was so helpful to us. And I know Stephanie and Darren attended. It was a magical moment where the youth of our community came out and said, in the form of the morals, this is what we believe diversity and unity look like in our community. And it was inspiring and timely, and I really have to say the youth have really pulled a lot of hope out of our community for the things and the peace and the quality of life that we all want. Continuing with the task force, we had Anna Hooper from the CSD, Nan Mahan from the Arts Commission, Marie Mertz from SMAC, Margaret Munson from the Elk Grove Artists, Angie Perry from the Chamber, and Kevin and Angela Spies, who also happen to be officers on the Arts Advocacy Project. Thank you again. We couldn't have done it without you, and we're so proud to be part of a new topic of conversation on the Elk Grove Community Table. The Arts Advocacy Project is just breaking ground the last year, and this is our big first major attempt at showcasing the arts. And we'll be back to do it again next year. Thank you again.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Judy, just real quick, we just want to commend you for all your work in the Art Advocacy Project, your whole team. It was a huge success, and it's because of all of you who worked on the project. So thank you very much for bringing arts to our city.
Well, keep helping us, and we'll keep trying harder.
We will.
I'm going to echo that too. I thought I had a lot of energy, but I think you just have way more than I do. It was amazing to see so much support around arts, and I'm excited to be a part of it again next year. And to,
Well, I'm not an artist, but I am an arts lover and a lover of the arts and an advocate. Advocacy is my art form in this project. So thank you very much for your support.
Thank you.
Terrific. Thank you, ma'am. Next item, please.
Take us to Section 6, General Administration Information.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. I'm going to go off script for a little bit because we received some really good news as you all were coming in to start the council meeting. The California Transportation Commission staff just published their recommendations for SB 1 funding. The commission will take action on the recommendations in May. These recommendations include funding for I-5 HOV lanes in the amount of $15 million. This will fully fund a mainline reconstruction of Interstate 5 from Highway 50 to just north of Laguna Boulevard and installs HOV lanes from Highway 50 to at least Laguna Boulevard, and depending on the bids, may be able to fund the lanes to a mile south of Elk Grove Boulevard. Also funded was a joint application that was between the Connector Joint Powers Authority, the cities of Elk Grove and Folsom, and this joint application received $20 million of funding. Elk Grove will receive a total of $10 million, with $7 million for Grantline Road from Waterman Road to Bradshaw Road, and $3 million for the reconstruction of Camera Road from Lint Ranch Parkway to the future extension of Bighorn Boulevard. Unfortunately, the funding requested for the extension of Camera to I-5 was not recommended for funding. I want to thank Kara Rettig and Bob Murdoch for working with CTC staff and Assemblymember Cooper's office to secure the recommendation of $25 million of SB 1 funding for the city of Elk Grove.
Thank you, Laura.
Now going to the script. First, we'd like to tell you that an open house is scheduled tomorrow at Pleasant Grove High School's cafeteria to share information with the community about the improvements coming to the intersection of Sheldon Road and Bradshaw Road this summer, including the construction schedule and planned detours. The meeting is scheduled again Thursday night from 6 o'clock to 7:30 with a presentation scheduled between 6:05 and 6:20. Also, remember that May is Bike Month, and in recognition of this, the city will join the region in celebrating Bike Month in May with a series of events, starting with Bike and Bite on Wednesday, May 2nd. The city will sponsor free bike valet service and host a Bike Month Energizer station at the monthly Food Truck Mania event from 5 to 9 at the Old Town Plaza. Those who ride to the event will receive a discount coupon good at any food truck that night. Now we have a series of reminders. First, a groundbreaking ceremony for the future Elk Grove Animal Shelter will be held tomorrow at 4:30 at the construction site located off of Iron Rock Way and Union Park Drive. The Integrated Waste Division will host the second of 3 scheduled oil filter exchange events this Saturday from 10 to 1 at O'Reilly Auto Parts at 8751 Elk Grove Boulevard. This is where residents can trade in their used filters and receive up to 2 new filters for free. Also, the police department and integrated waste will collect unused prescription medication as a part of National Prescription Drug Take-Back Day this Saturday from 10 to 2 at the police department at 8380 Laguna Palms Way. Residents can bring their unwanted or expired medications to the police department for proper disposal. A reminder that the city and the Cosumnes Community Services District will host Fit Fest this Saturday from 9 to 5 at Elk Grove Park. Activities will include the Elk Grove Gauntlet and Kids Ninja Warrior competitions and a family festival. This year's annual business walk is a business talk. The city will host a small business startup forum on May 3rd that will take the place of this year's business walk. Entrepreneurs or small business startups can learn more about the resources that are available to all businesses in our community, especially home-based businesses. This event will be held at the California North State University's Event Center at 9560 West Terran Drive, and it starts at 10 o'clock. Also, to remind residents that high grasses and weeds are a fire danger, code enforcement will be proactively patrolling for fire hazards leading up to the 4th of July holiday and continuing all summer. If you see a property with grass or weeds over 12 inches high, we encourage folks to call the Code Enforcement Division to report it. Going to the standing citywide initiatives update with regard to the community center, construction is underway for the community center and completion is anticipated for early summer 2019. The city is currently working on operating plans for the facility. Moving to page 3, the Grant Line Mosier to Bradshaw, the connector Joint Powers Authority is proposing that the city take the lead on this project in the future. And then on page 4, even though we're having the groundbreaking tomorrow, our contractor Boyer began performing preliminary construction activities and some demolition beginning on Monday. That concludes my report, and happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions, members? There are no questions. Thank you. All right, next item.
Take us to section 7, council comments, reports, and future agenda items.
Okay, Member Nguyen.
Thank you, sir. Let's see. I attended the PNDA Scholarship Dinner Award, also the 9th Annual Bryan Hall Walk to Remember. Such a beautiful day that day. So, and the mayor and I both attended that. It was very well attended. It was such a nice event. Then I got lucky and I hit the jackpot and got strep throat for the 3rd time in 12 months. Took me out for the entire week last week. And so didn't get a chance to attend many of the events and many of the meetings that happened last week. However, tomorrow I've got a presentation with some kids at Franklin Elementary School to talk about the Amgen that we're gonna have come up, Sacramento Air Quality Meeting, my Library Authority meeting. I'll be at the Animal Shelter groundbreaking, Greater Sacramento Urban League's dinner, Invictus Foundation, and the Child Abuse Prevention Center. And that's all tomorrow.
Wow.
That's all I got.
Okay, Member Detrick.
Well, since today is National Professional Administrators Day, I want to wish all the administrators a happy Administration Day. Had the opportunity to go to the George Park grand opening. Hard to believe that's our 97th park in Elk Grove. That's unbelievable. We'll be 100 probably within the next 2 years. You all had a chance to see Vanessa and John from the Fly Brave Foundation. Vanessa put on a phenomenal talent show last week. I had a chance to go there with my wife, and to see these young men and women get up on stage and perform with special needs, and I was blown away. Some of them were absolutely phenomenal at singing and dancing and playing instruments. Great to see them have their opportunities broadened to be able to get on a stage and have an audience, and for their families to be able to celebrate such a positive environment. Last weekend was the SEVA Awards, which is for kids K through 12, where they produce videos that get judged in different categories, and it's a phenomenal event. With the other hat that I wear as the chair of the Sacramento Cable Commission, we help fund that project, and it's great to see the fruits of your efforts. Liz Rose, who's the executive director who champions that, just does an unbelievable job. And there were quite a few of the Elk Grove schools that were participating. Usually Jim Brantley's definitely one that's always got a few different of his classes putting videos in for the challenge. We had the Taste of Elk Grove last weekend, the Elk Grove Laguna Sunrise Rotary. That's always a great event, as well as one of the competing events of the same night, and unfortunately we can't make them to all, was the Project Right Steak Dinner, which Project Right is another fantastic program, and the steaks that they cook there are unbelievable. Went to the Brew Fest on our Old Town Plaza, and it was expanded. I think that's, Kristen, correct me if I'm wrong, that's the first time we've had an event that expanded and took up almost our entire property. Is that accurate? That's the only event. Yeah, so it was double the size of what they normally are, and I think there was close to 50 breweries that were in attendance, and I just a guess, probably had to be at least 20 food trucks there, plus several other vendors and several thousand people. That whole Old Town was vibrant. If you were, I was there early at the Brick House, and it was packed for dinner. The bar was packed. Everywhere you went, Lola's was packed, and I had to leave about 8:30 and went to another event. But some of my friends that were in Old Town after the event was over, they said everywhere was packed because everybody left the event and went over to the local pub. So Bob's and Lola's, and so obviously that helps them thrive, and that's one of our goals, to make people aware of what's down there. So Kristen, thanks for you and your team for helping coordinate with everybody for that. So, and that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. So we were, Councilman Hume and I were gone at the, it was a joint SACOG Economic Development trip to Maryland, portions of Maryland, visiting College Park and Hyattsville. We also had the annual Cap to Cap trip. It was, to me, it was very educational, learning what other communities are doing around economic development and how they employ transit as part of that, their strategy. For Cap to Cap, I served on the workforce development team this year. It's very educational for me. It's a little bit broadening my horizons, learning about the Perkins Act to authorize career technical education programs, and visiting the Senate and House authorization committees with our Los Rios Community College partners, as well as other folks that work in workforce development. Learning about why the authorization bill has yet to be reauthorized, what the challenges are in Congress, and meeting with other congressional representatives. I also attended many of the events that were mentioned earlier. The Brew Fest, which if folks haven't been, highly recommend going next year, but tickets go quick. Taste of Elk Grove, always great to get a taste of the different beverages and foods around our city in one spot. We also had a RT workshop. It was a joint RT board with the Sacramento Transportation Authority and SACOG memberships, talking about transit, and so I don't want to steal too much of Councilman Hume's thunder, but we participated in that as well. And that's it. Tomorrow we have Library Authority. Thank you.
All right. Member Hume.
Thank you, Mayor. Without being too repetitive, I will say that the 2 days that we went ahead of Cap to Cap to do the SACOG Economic Development Tour of Baltimore Avenue, which is also known as Route 1, very informative. One of the things that I think stood out to me, because you know, we seem to run into this when we're looking at doing higher density housing, is I don't know if it's a difference in a Maryland state code versus a California state code, but they allow wood framing beyond 3 stories. And so they had what would you say it was, a 6 or 7 story multifamily project that was being wood framed. I know that would make a big difference as far as who can bid on jobs and the overall cost of those jobs. Yeah. But it was really very interesting, and a lot of joint partnerships between the University of Maryland, Community Development Corporation in Hyattsville, as well as mixed-use private development. And then on Cap to Cap, I participated strictly in connector-related meetings, and I will say, you know, obviously in past years when congressional appropriations, which are more commonly referred to as earmarks, still existed, it was easier to tie a correlation between efforts and results. And so, you know, the three major interchanges that we upgraded, the Emergency Operations Center that's in the back of this building, those were all fairly well related to our relationships with our federal delegates. It's much harder now to get that correlation because we're really planting acorns rather than harvesting oaks. But I will say that we had a meeting with the Deputy Secretary of Department of Transportation, as well as a lunch with the special counsel to the Secretary of Transportation, as well as Congressman Garamendi's office and Congressman McClintock. And we got some good feedback, and I believe that our infra grant is very competitive, should come out of staff being recommended or highly recommended. And if it gets up to the Secretary, there's a good chance that we should receive our $56 million request in funding for the Folsom segment and the Camera Road segment. So we heard the Camera was passed over by the state, but potentially that could bear fruit at the federal level. Also attended the Brewfest, and I will say this, Captain Albright's undercover costume was so good, he even had a glass with residual beer in it. So just kidding, he was off duty. But he had his hat turned around backwards, so he was really hard to recognize. It was a great event, and unbelievable how many people turned out. I, too, noticed the overflow into our local businesses, which was great, and I thought it was a great use of the space to go all the way back to the back building. Attended the Taste of Elk Grove the following night. At the RT retreat, we had a nationally recognized transit planner who is undertaking a role of revamping RT's network. Gave a very, I thought, very informative presentation that basically, with all things transit, there's a spectrum, and in order to achieve one end of the spectrum, you have to forego at the other end of the spectrum. And so really, it's about how you place your priorities. And as I've said before, one of the main spectrum analyses to be done is whether you want to look at frequent service that really concentrates on where ridership is highest and where you can grow it, or if you want to concentrate on coverage that gets some sort of transit into every neighborhood for people who need it to be able to use it. It's a very difficult decision to make, but one that we'll have to consider soon. Regional sanitation was canceled this morning. I have the Connector Joint Powers Authority meeting is on Friday. Next Wednesday will be a LAFCO meeting that what was supposed to have been heard this month, that we canceled that meeting due to the impending protests. Will be heard next Wednesday. And then I've got a question I was approached by a constituent who lives along one of our drainage creeks, and it says that his property extends beyond the back of his fence, and he was wondering if he could adjust that. I've never heard of that. I would assume there's an easement, or at least if it's not city property. Would I want to go through Public Works or through planning? Who would have the better answer?
We can look into that.
Okay, I'll shoot you the information on it. I've got a rough idea of where this individual lives. That's all I have. Thank you.
Bob says Darren, Darren says Bob.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, excellent. Attended the George Park opening. Had an opportunity to attend a number of Court of Honors, presented them certificates that was generated by the clerk's office. So thank you, Jason, for continuing to hammer those out. Participated in the Indus Valley Chamber of Commerce Capital event. Attended the Taste of Elk Grove. Attended the Project Ride stake fundraiser. Went to the Brewfest. The sanitation meeting this morning has been canceled. Air quality scheduled for tomorrow. That is all. All right, next item.
Take us to Section 8, our consent calendar items. I think there's a speaker
Okay, we have
that is
somebody
signed.
signed up to speak. I want to open public comment and want to call up Mr. Mac Worthy.
I'm having fun. You don't have to say Mr. Mac. Worthy, either one. I see this, people, we see a duplication of what I heard for the past 4 years in Sacramento. Develop a small business center. People, It's sad what's going on here. You know, just downtown Sacramento got it cornered on all businesses. If you ain't connected downtown, can't go into business. What I would do if I was you all, I would get a bond and put 900 units of low-income housing, add $1,000 a month for each person in there, and use that money and pay you back 6%, and use that money for hands-on to go into business. Do you have any property here that you could subsidize? Florin Road subsidized property. We have heard entrepreneurs for years and years. We've talked to entrepreneurs that I want to be an entrepreneur, don't even know what withheld tax is. You know, you're going to go to jail. The best way to go to jail is not deposit that withheld tax. This has to be taught. You can't get this overnight. I got a BS at American Representative College in Business Law. Accounting was my major when I went to City College. But the expertise of being in the business for 44 years, I got an education. And I would like to see something go on board to say, hey, you know, here's the testing you got to go through to qualify to get money, because many entrepreneurs come. You can go back and do that research on Sacramento, past 4 years, how many entrepreneurs are still in the business. A nonprofit organization is not a business, it's an entity. A law firm is not a business, it's an entity. We can't make it off nonprofit. You can't sustain yourself off nonprofit. Just arena, get the nonprofit money from the association, give it to the kids, and fill the arena. That's double using nonprofit money. I think it should be legal. It's already went off as nonprofit, then you give it to a kid and go down and say the arena was full. That's not happening. That's not, new money got to come in Northern California to sustain the state. But what I say, if you support the Constitution, write an email to the federal courthouse and support the Constitution, within 3 years, all will come around. Independent equality, economics. Economics will turn around under Trump. Economics will turn around under Trump. You may not like him. I was the person who said Trump would be the next president of the United States because I knew his background. I knew where he come from in South Carolina. They're hardworking people. All we got to do is get the right population on board. Say, Mr. Trump, if you put this money in, we go. Don't get caught here and he take that money, because you will see crime, and I believe in law and order.
Thank you, sir. Seeing that there are no additional members of the public signed up to speak, want to close public comment. I have a motion and a second. If there's no discussion, all in favor? Aye. Oppose? Abstention? All right, next item.
Take us to section 9, our public hearing, starting with item 9.1, which is a public hearing to consider an extension of terms of the Sterling Meadows Development Agreement for a period of 2 years.
Good evening, Mayor Lee, members of the Elk Grove City Council, Antonio Ablog, Planning Manager and Project Planner for the Sterling Meadows Development Agreement Amendment. With this project, the applicant is requesting an extension of the Sterling Meadows Development Agreement for a period of 2 years beyond its initial 10-year term. The Sterling Meadows Development Agreement was approved in 2008, and it has a life of 10 years, which expires this July. They are now requesting a 2-year term extension to that development agreement, which would ultimately bring the termination date to July 11th of 2020. Before you, you can see the location of the Sterling Meadows project. It's approximately 200-acre project to the west of Highway 99, just north of Camera Road. As far as the Sterling Meadows plan, the plan is largely residential in nature. As I mentioned, it's approximately 200 acres with almost 1,200 dwelling units total, with 984 of those being single-family lots. There is one multifamily site that is proposed to accommodate up to 200 units, and approximately 18.5 acres of parks, detention basins, and parkways. As far as the current status of the project, the applicant is diligently pursuing the build-out of that project. As you see on the map before you, there are phases 1A through 1E at the northern part of the project that the maps have been filed and they're in construction currently. There are a few phases south of the project, or in the south area of the project, which are still in review. Those are phases 1F and 1G, and then phases 2A through 2E. Within the first recorded phases, there have been approximately 30 building permits for residential construction issued. As far as staff's review of this project, in determining the appropriateness of the extension, we looked at our general plan, both our general plan policies and some of the other policies for the city of Elk Grove, chiefly those policies that are up on the screen before you. Economic development policy in the general plan ED7, Action 1 calls for the city to continue to improve Elk Grove's jobs housing ratio and seeks to achieve sufficient employment opportunities in Elk Grove for all employed persons living within the city, and also continue to promote the city's role as a regional center. Furthermore, one of the primary strategic goals of the City Council has been to foster a vibrant and diverse economy in Elk Grove, oriented towards growing jobs in targeted industries, while also offering an array of residential choices, civic amenities, and entertainment options that attract new business. To give you a context of the project surrounding Sterling Meadows and what we have done since the original approval of the Sterling Meadows project in 2008, we have approved the Southeast Area Policy Plan to the west. That is a plan that takes advantage of the location at the south end of the city and along the Joint Powers Southeast Area Connector, and also proposed rapid transit, which is proposed for an alignment along Bilby Road that would come through the middle of the project, and also proposed to continue further east towards 99. But with the Southeast Area Policy Plan, we did look at a mix of uses, not just residential uses. We looked at high-density residential uses in conjunction with offices, light industrial, flex uses, and more commercial uses. And you can see how the Southeast Area Plan has more of a mix of land uses than the Sterling Meadows Plan. As far as the extension and staff's discussion with the applicant regarding the extension, staff previously provided the applicant with terms under which it could recommend approval of such an extension. Some of those terms included the provision of 30 acres of office or other commercial use at the southern end of the project, close to the Camera Road alignment, which would be the Joint Powers Southeast Connector. Also, recognizing future rapid transit in the area, providing right-of-way for those services along the Bilby Road corridor. Also recommended were participation in the I-5 sub-regional fee as adopted by the council, and also participation in the Southeast Policy Area Drainage Impact Fee Program. In studying some of these recommendations, the city found that the benefit of rezoning a portion of that site to office would result in a benefit of approximately $2.4 million for office and $4.4 million for commercial retail, and that's on top of the creation of local jobs for local residents. The applicant maintains that there is no viable market for that 30 acres of office at the southern end of the project, and the removal of approximately 204 lots represents a loss of approximately $11 million in lost revenue. As far as the applicant's previous offers, the applicant did offer a $500,000 contribution to the city to defray some of the costs of the 2-year extension. However, staff did not accept that proposal as it did not represent an equitable response to the city's estimated loss or the equivalent of the 30 acres of office designation. Within the past 48 hours, staff has received a new proposal from the applicant that included a number of deal points, and just city staff would need additional time to really review those and make a recommendation, proper recommendation on those new proposal points. This project did go to the Planning Commission on its meeting of February 15, 2018. The commission did vote 3 votes to 0 to recommend that the City Council deny this request for a 2-year extension. Staff is recommending that the council deny the applicant's request for a continuance tonight. Since this request is for denial, the project would be exempt from any environmental review. That concludes my presentation, and staff is available to answer any questions, should you have any.
Any questions? There are no questions. Thank you, sir. All right, at this point, I want to declare a public hearing open. I want to invite the applicant, Representative Eden Berry, to speak.
Good evening, Mayor and Council and staff. My name is Aiden Berry. I'm with the True Life Companies. We're the managing entity for VTLSM, the owners of the Sterling Meadows project. It's great to be here this evening. I would be remiss without just congratulating you through the city manager's office and staff on the SB1 funding that was announced earlier tonight. That's huge, and congratulations. I know a lot of work went into that, so that's great news. So we started this journey approximately July of last year and initiating some communication with the city manager's office. And staff has done a very accurate job in describing kind of the back and forth with staff and with the manager's office in attempting to get to a mutual agreement. Both myself and Anders Godi, my partner, business partner from Vardé, who's based in Minneapolis, was at the Planning Commission hearing. And it was very clear at that hearing that, you know, going down the line, I know we only had 3 representatives present, but it was very clear the position from the Planning Commission, and you all have been very clear over the last year in this discussion. So what Anders and I had come up with, and we think is a very creative idea that we presented to staff on Monday. We believe it includes a core component of what you all have been asking for the last year, as I've started this conversation literally as of July 19th of last year. So tonight, what I'd like to recommend is I'm here to answer any general questions that you all may have of me or the project status or where we're going. But I believe it would be fair for me to ask on a spontaneous request if we continue this item through to on a date certain to May 9th, so that we have time to work with staff in analyzing our proposal that we put on the table as of Monday. I think it represents kind of a good faith effort from our side in listening to the city. You've been very clear. We're excited about the proposal that we put forth, but in all fairness to staff, in order to be able to do an adequate analysis, I think a short-term continuance of this item would be appropriate to May 9th. But I'm available to answer any questions that you might have of me this evening.
Any questions? Vice Mayor?
Not a question, but a comment, Aiden. I just want to thank you for working with us on this issue. I know you have constraints from business side, and we've had our own. We've had some conversations. So thank you for coming here today.
And just on the footnote, I really appreciate that, Vice Mayor. And sometimes I get labeled as being saying no a lot. I attempted in my dialogue, both with the city manager's office and with you all, in saying no, but with a comma and explaining why. And I think I've been very open with all of you that we acquired the property as an entitled residential property. And so we've been working through the economic analysis of that decision-making, and that's been consistent in my documentation back and forth. But that being said, sometimes you can only beat your head against the wall so much. And as a developer, we actually think that as we beat our head against a concrete wall, that the concrete wall will give way. Every once in a while, you have to realize that that won't happen. So the presentation we all put together for a presentation with your staff on Monday was that realization that we needed to have a different look at it. We are running parallel paths. We are, as your staff will attest, we are continuing to move forward on our small lot final maps and our improvement plans. We've had an excellent working relationship with your staff as if we were going to perfect those within the deadline. But this is a kind of a unique opportunity for us to discuss, and I want to make sure that we're not short-sighted on it. And I think if staff would concur that at least between now and May 9th, we could do a decent analysis of it and come back in tandem to be able to present that to this council. I'm available for any further questions.
Okay, go ahead. Councilman Dietrich.
Aiden, you're not alone. I say no all the time.
Yeah.
I appreciate that you have come back at least with some flexibility with a concept. Some of the deal points I've heard, I think we're still quite a ways apart, but I want to see the dialogue continue because I think at least the concept of the developmental plan is something that we all would like to see, but I think there's some deal points that definitely need to be worked out. I know that there's been some talk on how long an extension you're looking for. You're looking for 2 years. I think that's way, way, way beyond what we're willing to do. But, you know, I know that we haven't gone through deliberation yet, but I want to at least take the time to appreciate, you know, one, reaching out to us, reaching out to staff, and coming up with a place that we can hopefully find some middle ground. I come from the belief when you go into negotiations and when both sides leave the room a little disappointed, probably a fair deal.
Yeah, agreed. And that is more accurate than not. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Berry, I appreciate you coming here. I had a conversation with staff. I do like your attempts and your proposal. I think you're going in the right direction. My hope is all the details will be ironed out, and I think the members have highlighted some of the appreciation that I have as well. So I would be in support of a short extension, but I'm not in favor of a 2-year extension, regardless of whatever it is. So I do appreciate it, though. I don't have any questions.
Thank you all.
Any questions, members? No? No more questions? Thank you, sir. I want to open public comment. I see that Ms. Lynn Wee has signed up to speak. Ms. Wee, come on down.
Good evening, Lynn Wheat, citizen planner. So I've been involved in this game for a long time, and I couldn't figure out why we wouldn't allow a development agreement to be extended for a project when they were willing to come to our town and take a risk and develop within our city. Now, I figured it out. They're from out of town, so they're not the usual players. But what also concerns me is that the total history of this particular site wasn't given in the staff report, that the staff report began in 2008. And it did not begin in 2007, June of 2007, when the Planning Commission said to deny a rezone and eliminating the commercial office, when our city council approved the rezone, removing the office and commercial. So we went into that with good faith, and now suddenly we're going to have what I consider a business from out of town, and because we want to change and use policies from our general plan that are suddenly now convenient to use. We couldn't use them on the Capitol Nursery project and keep that commercial. No, we rezoned that for housing, and the development for the commercial still hasn't happened. So, I've said it before, residents moving to Elk Grove, be very wary when you buy next to an empty field. Businesses coming to Elk Grove, be very wary. There is a game here that you need to play to get what you want. It's not a level playing field. And I hope I really kind of explain this more on some comments and opinion piece that I wrote on elkgrovenews.net, and I hope everybody will take a look at it. Councilman Hume, in 2007, you agreed with me when I approached the dais, approached you and said, deny the rezone, that we need to leave the commercial there because it was a good plan. Okay, well, it was approved because the council decided to ignore that. So there's a development.
A majority of council. I still voted against it.
You and Davis.
That's correct.
Were the ones that voted against it. So now are we being fair to somebody that's from out of town that's not a usual player in the game? They're the third owners. They're willing to take a risk. And yet we're going to tell them that they need to put commercial back in. In 2007, commercial wasn't viable then. It is not viable now. You just have to drive around our current city to see the vacancies. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Seeing that there are no additional speakers, I want to close the public comment. I'd like to invite the applicant to come back for closing, please, if you wish.
Yes, thank you. No additional comments unless you've got any additional questions for me. We appreciate your support on what I'm suggesting would be an interim move tonight, that we continue the item to May 9th if staff supports that as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. I want to declare public hearing closed. Councilor Deliberation and Direction.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'd like to give a little bit of deliberation. I think I'm the only council member that was on council when this project was first approved.
I was in the audience.
You were in the audience, and later that year, you were elected to be up here, so you just missed the fun fireworks. portion.
And you and I, we would have had 3 that would have denied it if I was on the council at that time.
Correct. And so unfortunately, the person who should have had their feet held to the fire on this had a majority of council vote to go along with their will. I won't bother mentioning that individual's name, but I voted against it then. Then a couple of years later, when they came in for the large lot tentative map, Gary Davis voted against that to maintain his position in the project. I recognized that this was a part of the California Subdivision Map Act, and it was a ministerial approval, and so I wasn't going to issue a protest vote. But when Mr. Berry came to see me almost a year ago and wanted to get my temperature on things, and I told him at that point, I will never drive by this site and know that I have voted to approve a sound wall with residential behind it. I'm just not going to do it. He said, well, do I need to get all my maps approved prior to the DA expiring? I said, unless you can scare up other votes, that's absolutely what you want to do. So, Ms. Wheat, to your point, I have been upfront and honest with him from the first day he came into my office that I would not vote for anything that would allow this to be developed as residential along what I consider to be our most important economic corridor within the city of Elk Grove. I don't know whether it should be commercial, whether it should be office, whether it should be dense vertical mixed use, but I know that having a sound wall with houses on the other side of it would absolutely destroy what I think we're trying to do with that corridor. As with any good businessman, Mr. Berry and his partners were resistant to that idea because of the potential unrealized income that means to the performer that I'm sure they did before they got into the deal. That's their business, that's not my business. My business is protecting what I see as the larger vision for the city. Now here we are at the 11th hour, the DA is about to expire, and that's part of the other thing that you have to understand is those entitlements and that development agreement, which locked in what the project was allowed to do and not allowed to do, had an expiration date. And so, yes, they took a risk. They are the third person to pick up the project, and they are actively trying to deliver it, but that 10-year window is closing. And so now, just on Monday, I saw the new plan that actually proposes shifting over to the use at the south end of the corridor. So I think there's a deal to be made there. I don't know that we're there yet, and I don't think we can get there within a 2 window of a simple continuance. So I would ask the city attorney, could we provide, or should we provide a shortened extension in order to allow time for this to be fully fleshed out, and then would that be brought back at the next meeting, or how should we proceed?
So let me see if I can give you some options, if I'm hearing you correctly, Councilmember Hume and the rest of the council. I'm looking at the same calendar you are. They're going to run out of time real fast. And if a first read of something doesn't occur at the next meeting on May 9th, with the second read being on May 23rd, making any DA amendment effective the 23rd of June, they're going to miss their window, and the DA is going to expire. Because if a first read does not occur until May 23rd, running out the clock on that means that the extension would not be effective until July 13th, 2 days after their DA expires. The point that I'm making is if the council is inclined to do anything, short continuance, I think, or short extension, I think is what I may have heard from you, Councilmember Hume, the time to do it would be at the next meeting. So one of the things you might consider doing in order to give staff and the applicant time to discuss that and analyze the merits of what's a pretty detailed proposal that we all just got a couple of days ago, including yourself, is you could do maybe a 90-day extension. We could bring that back as a first read at the next meeting, do a second read the following meeting, and make that would be effective before the DA expires, effectively causing their current DA to expire in, was it October? It would really just be a bridge amendment extension to get over the timeline for their current DA. What I would suggest if you do that, because I know the southern portion of the property is important to the council, what happens there, is I would suggest that you incorporate into that amendment a couple of things. One would be that no final maps could be approved during that 90-day window for the southern portion, and by that I mean south of Bilby. Also, no building permits would be approved for that southern portion south of Bilby. That would give 90-day extension to allow staff and the applicant to work together to see if we can come up with a proposal that the staff could recommend ultimately be up to the city council, but the proposal that was set forth the other day has a lot of moving parts to it. And I don't think that we've had in 48 hours enough time to do an analysis of that, certainly not one that we can present meaningfully to the council. So I think an extension, or excuse me, a continuance is fine, but if you want to give some direction on what we might bring back as a very brief extension with the conditions I mentioned, we could do that for a first read. If you don't do something at the next meeting, the DA is effectively going to expire, and it will expire on July 11th, because there just won't be enough time to do the DA amendments under state law.
Okay, so as I said, I think I've been consistent on my position about the land use for this parcel from day one. That has always carried through. I've been consistent and honest with Mr. Berry about that position since the first time that we've met, and I'm hoping that there is a deal to be made that will provide a higher and better land use along that Camera Road corridor. So I would make a motion that we direct staff to come back with a 90-day extension of the DA with the provisions outlined by the city attorney.
Second.
And continue this item to a date certain of the next meeting, which is May 9th. Correct?
So we need to do both?
No, you just did it all together. I just want to make it clear that we're continuing this item to May 9th, so it's not, we wouldn't have to do another public hearing notice. You just continue it to a date certain. So what I'm suggesting is a continuance to a date certain, May 9th, with direction to staff to bring back the amendment that you and I just discussed.
90-day amendment.
Correct.
Extension, excuse me.
Okay, got a motion, second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstention? All right, next item.
Take us to item 9.2, which is a public hearing to consider a request to amend the general plan land use designation for plus minus 2.29 acres at the southeast corner of Calvine Road and Bradshaw Road from rural residential to commercial.
Good evening, Mayor Lee, members of the Elk Grove City Council, Antonio Ablog, Planning Manager and Project Planner for the Calvine Bradshaw Commercial General Plan Amendment Project. With this project, the applicant Armstrong Development is requesting a general plan amendment to amend the general plan designation for approximately 2.29 acres at the southeast corner of Calvine and Bradshaw Roads. With this project, should the GPA general plan amendment request be supported, the applicant would still have to move forward with a full review of additional entitlements, including a rezone, conditional use permits to operate a fueling station, convenience store, and also a car wash and a restaurant with drive-through service. So that would be conditional use permits and design review with the additional environmental review that would be required of that potential development. As far as the project location, it's located at the northern border of the city at the corner of Bradshaw Road and Calvine Roads. The map before you shows the rural residential area in blue, and this project is at the northwest corner of the rural residential area. As far as the project site itself, a large portion of the site is vacant. It's currently zoned agricultural residential AR5. There is a house and a few accessory structures on the site currently. As far as surrounding uses, to the north of the site are lands in the county of Sacramento. Directly to the north are single-family homes that have been constructed, and to the northwest kitty corner to this is a vacant commercially zoned site. To the west of this site is an existing CVS pharmacy, which is in the general commercial zone, and to the south of this are further lands that are in the rural residential general plan designation, which are zoned AR5. As far as the potential site plan that the developer is proposing at ultimate build-out consists of a fueling station with 9 pumps, which equates to 18 fueling positions. That fueling center would have a convenience store and a drive-through car wash. And associated with this full development would be a restaurant with drive-through service at the eastern end of the site. As far as staff's analysis of the project, looking at the project, as far as our policy land uses within the Sheldon rural area, states that those uses shall be consistent with the community's rural character, emphasizing lot sizes of at least 2 gross acres, and roadways which preserve the area's mature trees and limited, and along with limited commercial services. And as far as the existing AR5 and AR zoning designations within the rural residential area, those designations are rural in nature and include small roadways and allow for animal keeping and raising, equestrian uses, agriculture uses, and limited commercial uses. Just to show you what the general plan designations, how those appear in the land surrounding the project site. The project site is highlighted on the map before you. The light yellow represents the rural area, with the orange kind of more rural estates, which are smaller lots up to 1 acre, I believe. And then as you get further to the west, you get into the normal RD5 and RD7, or RD4 and RD5 subdivisions. This map also locates some of the closer commercial areas that you'll find in relation to this site. Approximately 2 miles to the west, there is our existing commercial services, including fueling. That would be the closest commercial service. Also located on here are commercial services further south at Elk Grove Florin Road and I believe Bond Road, and then you have the Sheldon commercial area over on Grant Line Road, which is also within the rural residential area. This project was heard by the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission neither approved nor disapproved the project, but they did vote to forward the project to City Council with a recommendation that the City Council consider amending the general plan and provide direction to staff to further study commercial uses at the specific corner. Comments from the Planning Commission supporting this recommendation included that the project is located at the intersection of 2 arterial roadways. Also, there are commercial uses to the west of the site within the city of Elk Grove and commercially designated parcels in the county of Sacramento to the northwest of the site. Furthermore, they pointed that the subject site is on the edge of the rural residential designation area. While they did make that recommendation, they did note the following concerns. They wanted to limit where commercial uses are allowed, and they did not want the moving forward with a general plan amendment for this corner to spur further commercial designations within the rural residential area. Also, they noted that any commercial project proposal, the applicant for that proposal should really do their due diligence with the neighborhood to find out what projects would work with the neighborhood and what services and commercial businesses they would need and feel would fit within their community. Also the intent of the recommendation by the commission, not necessarily keep it a smaller project, but a project that would be a good fit with the surrounding properties. In looking at the general plans policy and its intent to keep the rural area rural, we looked at the proposed future build-out of the fueling station, and in looking at that, we found that the potential of those uses to create impacts related to noise, traffic, light and glare, and aesthetic concerns really weren't supported by the general plan language. However, should there be support to amend the general plan, staff would ask for the direction from City Council to work with the applicant on a complete entitlements submittal and full review of the project. Even as the project, we are requesting that the City Council deny the general plan amendment this evening. Therefore, there would be no environmental review conducted. However, if the project were to move forward, the applicant would be working with staff to do full review, both of the site plan and architectural plans, but full environmental review to determine what the impacts are and whether those impacts could be mitigated for in consideration of its location within the rural area. And since that full review of the project would come at considerable expense to both the applicant and the city, tonight we are just asking for a recommendation or a decision on the general plan amendment, as the general plan amendment drives the rest of the project. Should the general plan amendment not be supported, then the rest of the project would not move forward. However, if there is support for that general plan amendment, then staff would continue processing this project as we would a normal development project. That concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions should you have any.
Any questions? Go ahead, Vice Mayor.
Thank you. Thanks, Antonio. Just curious, in terms of the study about commercial development in this area on that corner, is there time between, as we're going through this general plan update, is there time to do this study, and if there were findings, to incorporate that in the general plan process so you would avoid an amendment?
As far as the process that the commission envisioned would be a process that entailed a lot of community discussion, both in what kind of land uses they want to see and what kind of designations they would want to see. But not only that, but the locations and limits to where those would occur. And in terms of thinking of where the general plan's at right now, that process probably would not occur in a fashion that would allow it to occur in the same time frame as the general plan update.
So you would still be looking at a general plan amendment? If
Yeah,
we
a
did
separate
that?
general plan amendment aside from our general plan update that we're working on.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, go ahead, Councilman Hume.
Just to tease this thought out further, I mean, we don't have a deadline necessarily for the general plan update.
No.
If it were to take a little bit longer to incorporate this, that's acceptable, correct?
Yes, it could be possible.
What about the environmental work that's been done, or how could or could not this be incorporated into work that's already been performed?
So at this point, the environmental process is wrapping up hopefully quickly. Most of the technical pieces are done. We do anticipate a round of sort of cleanup sites that we'll have after the EIR, the draft EIR publishes, the draft policy document publishes, based on Planning Commission and Council's considerations and directions. The sites that we're anticipating are fairly well localized, fairly small, that fit in with broader framework issues that we've previously talked about. So we don't anticipate major issues. I think what we're hearing through the outreach and the Planning Commission discussion is there's some neighborhood sensitivity, and the time that it takes to work through it, I'd almost equate it to more like, maybe not to exactly the same extent, but very similar to what we're doing with the Triangle area, where there's some strong community conversations need to happen about what that looks like, how big the area needs to be, what success ultimately looks like out there. And I wouldn't want the big update to be dragged down because we're trying to work through important details at the neighborhood level for one site.
Okay.
Okay, any more questions? Nope, no more questions. Thank you, sir. Want to declare a public hearing open. Would like to invite the applicant, project representative Julie Martin with Armstrong Development, to come up and speak.
You don't look like Julie.
Julie, I was expecting Julie. Brian.
Hi, no, I'm Brian Cooley with Cooley & Associates Development Consulting, representing Armstrong Development. I do have Kevin Parker and Reed Lewis with Armstrong Development in the back of the room, as well as Sheetal Bott with Kimberly Horn Engineering, our project engineer here this evening, to answer any questions. Just a little bit of background on Armstrong Development. They're based in Sacramento, have a long, extensive track record of commercial retail development in the Sacramento area. Most recently, they finished the Rayleigh's anchored shopping center at Highland Fair Oaks Boulevard, one of the largest trafficked thoroughfares in the Sacramento region. That was the old Hubacker Cadillac site, if you're familiar with that. In 2009, they did the CVS Pharmacy just west of this location we're talking about this evening here in the city of Elk Grove, and done a number of CVS pharmacies in the Sacramento region over the last 10 years. So they've got a great extensive track record in commercial development here in the region. One of the things that attracted them to this site initially, we'll talk about a little bit of market viability for this intersection, is the sheer volume of traffic that Calvine and Bradshaw has here in the city of Elk Grove. And as mentioned by your staff, it is a major arterial for regional commuter traffic going north for job centers in Rancho Cordova and Sacramento. We pulled some traffic counts for the Planning Commission last month, and back in 2015, there was approximately 40,000 trips a day at this intersection, and that was in 2015. And we've gradually seen that number increase with projects approved and built in the county to the north. In addition to that, we do anticipate further residential development along Calvine Road to the east and to the north by the county, which would spur more market demand for this intersection for some commercial services. Lastly, picking up on the Planning Commission's recommendation to study this intersection, following that meeting, we reached out to members of the Sheldon Community Association, had some extensive conversation with Bill Myers, a meeting with Bill Myers, talking about what a comprehensive planning effort of this intersection might look at beyond just our 2-acre project. And we did concur with the Planning Commission's recommendation to you guys for some further study of this intersection based upon traffic counts, based upon market demand for gas stations on the east side of the freeway here in the city. We believe there is demand for additional gas stations and commercial uses here. And again, we'd be happy to continue working with your staff to look at if conditions have changed to warrant this small modification to the Sheldon Community Overlay. The last thing I just would say is I did see Mr. Myers' email that came out to all of you yesterday, I believe, proposing a dialogue or a study or some sort of a process to look at how this area might change its land use designation to more of a commercial in nature. So I don't know if that's viable in the general plan update that's going on now, or if a separate planning process independent of that could move forward and engage the community and have this discussion and come back to you. The only consideration that Armstrong has is they don't own the property. The property is under option. There is a limited time period in which they need to exercise that option or release the option. And they do believe that there is market viability today. And so we would, if we enter into a planning process, we'd like to know kind of what that end date looks like, what that process and how it would play out ultimately to come back to you and look at a full-fledged application and look at all the different impacts that are associated with that. So with that, I'm here to have some more dialogue with you, answer some questions as you go forward. I'm be interested in hearing the deliberations of the council. And again, we've got a full team here to answer any questions you might have. So thank you.
Any questions? Yeah. Go Vice Mayor.
Thanks, Brian.
Yes.
So if you obviously don't have to share, but to inform our decision, if we were to go that route, is there for your option date, is there a date that you need it to be done by?
You know, I don't quite have all the facts on our business issue with the landowner right now, but as I said, we don't own the site. You know, we entered into the deal with the expectation to be able to move forward at some point. We do have strong demand and interest by tenants for the site, which I think is going to remain given the extensive volume of traffic that does go through there and is going to continue to increase. So, you know, we have a long-term view for it, but however, you know, we do have a seller that would like to see us move forward on the property at some point. So, you know, whatever process we enter into, we'd like to know kind of what the end date looks like and kind of what the parameters of that is if it's independent from the general plan update. I think if it's incorporated in the general plan update, there is some sense of some finality because you do want to approve that at some point. So that's kind of the question marks, I think, as we discuss this evening. But again, I think a lot of the elements raised in Mr. Myers' letter we do agree with. We're willing to roll up our sleeves and work with the community and look at a plan that makes sense comprehensively for that corner, so we're not back here every couple of years and nibbling at the edges. I've heard the term camel's nose under the tent. We're very aware of that and respect not trying to pull that thread, if you will. We want to come up with a plan that works long-term for obviously the client and for business, but also for the community as well. So,
thank you.
Sure.
Okay. Any other questions? Nope, no questions. Thank you, sir. I want to open public comment. I see that Mr. Myers, that is, William Myers, signed up to speak. Come on up, sir.
Thank you very much. I want to thank Brian, actually, for his understanding of our position. We had some good conversations and so on, so we feel that we've had a good conversation along this. I just want to touch very quickly on why this procedural element is so important to us in the rural area. It might sound kind of strange. There's a piece of history here. When Elk Grove decided that it wanted to include a rural area as a value, it moved from just treating the rural area as a reserve land to be developed to actually wanting to protect it and give it a social role. Actually, it was quite interesting, is that quite early, planning understood that. Christine Crawford, at the time was head of it, okay. She picked up on that right away, and the planner who worked with us at the time, Bill Peebles, okay, Pam Johns, some of you know, got involved. They picked up on that right away, that this was a different kind of a question. So it's not just a place to expand into, it's something that you protect, but then you have a problem. How do you worry about the interface between commercial activities, we did want, Sheldon, commercial area there and so on, and the rural? You have two values working together. The answer that came out of that came out of planning. Actually, they worked very closely with us. And they said what you do is you set up a process in which you first look at the area, from principles, okay? What are the real issues involved here? What are the principles and so forth, okay? You lay that out, you discuss that in public, and then you move on that. After that, people can come in with business and so on, and they know the ground rules. It's fair for everybody, and you don't come back and have project by project arguments about every little thing that comes up. That's exactly what happened when you made the overlay, resolution and decisions for Sheldon. Afterwards, you added a couple other areas that came in there, they came up, but you move first. So the idea is that that protects us. What that does for us as rural residents is keeps the camel's nose out from the tent. So instead of having each little thing come up, then you ask, can this rural property be changed here, this one there? You ask, does this make sense from a planning point of view to do this? Then you only move inside the areas that have been agreed. Our view is, in a way, it was not fair to Brian and so on to let this issue come up so far as it has. It should have been stopped along the way and said, wait a minute. We don't have a decision about that yet, about that area. Well, so what we're suggesting is that it's perfectly appropriate to look at an area and say, times have gone on, we have things going on, we need to update our view of it. Let's take a look at that area and see whether or not it ought to be changed in some way. Then we have that debate. When a change is made, if it's made, then the projects come in, and the ground rules are set. We all know how to handle it. That also means that we have a chance as rural residents to do exactly what happened in the case of Sheldon. We can simply look and say, okay, how do we feather this area? How do we protect it? All these questions get answered ahead of time, and any project coming in knows how to deal with it. So for us, it's really important that this process, be observed of a decision about the area that's separate from that. We don't have a dog in that fight. We don't have a position on whether it should be or should not be. We just think that's perfectly up to the council to decide whether they should do it. I will say, as a historical fact, when we first set up the commercial areas there, we did raise the question about Calvine Road. Because it was obvious that there was going to be a big road there was going to be development. And Christine at that time suggested we forget about it at the moment because we had no way to predict what was going to happen there. But she simply said, if someday we need to, let's come back to it. And maybe that time is now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Bill, just a quick, quick question for you. First, thanks for coming out here tonight. Are you, and you may have said this earlier, and I apologize if I missed it, are you here speaking on behalf of the association? Or
Yes, I am,
as an
yes.
individual?
I'm speaking as chair of the association.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you, sir. There are no additional speakers signed up to speak, so I want to close the public comment and would like to invite Brian Cooley to come back up if you'd like to close. You're good? All right. I want to declare public hearing closed. Council deliberation and direction. Members?
Go.
Yeah, well, as one who was involved in the designation and creation of the rural area, I can say that we pretty well just tried to choose some boundaries as best we could, and we did a half-mile north and south of Sheldon Road to bring in Gresham, and then once we got off past Bradshaw, it just seemed easier to go out to the major roadways. But Bill's correct in that there was some recognition at the time that this corner of Calvine would be a much more urban interface than currently exists now. But if you look at what the county is currently developing and has in the books to develop it, it's going to be a very different feel on that corner. However, I was actually the one who came up with the idea to disallow wet infrastructure into the rural area, sewer and water, as a way to create a physical barrier to densification, so that by de facto, you could only have a 2-acre lot or larger. And I agree with Bill's point. I mean, you can do things like size that infrastructure to only serve a particular project, but if you do that on a case-by-case basis or piecemeal, then really all you're doing is pulling at the threads of the larger sweater, and you're never really holistically addressing what the community should look like and involving that community to be involved in that discussion. So I would be in favor of having that discussion, having that workshop. I appreciate that planning staff is pretty well burdened with the general plan update. So to answer Mr. Cooley's question, I would assume that the workshops potentially could be later this year, early next year, but that the actual general plan amendment wouldn't take place at least at a minimum of late next year, of 19. But I would say that we need to be precise in how we look at this from a natural barrier standpoint. So I would look at obviously Bradshaw to the west, Calvine to the north. Laguna Creek seems like an obvious barrier that runs southeast, and then potentially either Bader Road or the old central traction rail lines as a break to the west. And so that we look at, okay, this is a shifting area, but we are still going to contain it in order to preserve the larger rural area. So I'm in favor of the community involvement, the discussion. I appreciate the willingness of the applicant to recognize that they can make some decisions today and wait for the larger decision to be made. And so that's where I'm at, is to deny the project today, but to direct staff to engage in the larger discussion.
Okay, Vice Mayor.
Yeah, I would generally agree with those comments. I think we've heard, as it pertains to the Sheldon Inn, there's been some conflicts out there with folks, liking having the amenity nearby, but then not so much, having the noise. So I think times are changing, and I think if you're going to do it, let's take a holistic look at this. And so I'm in favor also of doing a comprehensive study for commercial uses on here. I'm flexible in terms of a boundary. I think sometimes it's just good to look at the whole thing in that regard. But that's where I'm at with that. If there was a way to do a parallel track and then just see where we, just because that would be nice if we could avoid doing a general plan amendment. But if there's a way to do a parallel track, and then if the general plan update is ready to go and they're still working on the workshops, then we just let that go. But if not, maybe we could incorporate. So those are my thoughts.
Okay, excellent. Do we have a motion you want to add? No? We have a motion?
No,
I think Member Detrick wanted to speak.
Okay. Member Detrick?
Yeah, I think I've been pretty clear on this, that it's been brought up putting the camel's nose under the tent here. And the problem is how do you create a fair situation? I know, Bill, what you mentioned in the concept, but I know there's been other applicants that have wanted to come in on other corners, and we've already rejected those. To do a wholesale review of the entire rural area, one is going to be pretty comprehensive to do it right. And I think there's a lot of cost involved with that. So who should really be bearing the cost if you're going to do that? I think it's a slippery slope if you start going in and attacking little bits and pieces in the community. And when you have, even if you put a strip along Calvine Road that you're going to say, we're going to make this commercial, butting up to the rural residential, as we've seen, even the Sheldon Inn, what a great facility and a great addition it is, even something as minor as that is causing problems out in the community. So if you start putting commercial with car washes, I just don't think that's the greatest fit for a rural area. I mean, we already have gas stations down the road. We have gas stations in the town of Sheldon. I don't support moving this forward.
Thank you. So Mr. Cooley talked about in 2015, there were over 40,000 cars that was taking that intersection of that route. I was one of those cars, so I know the traffic that goes through there. And there were times where I wish there was services where I can go in and gas up my vehicle or whatnot. I have family that live in the east side and where they wish that there were services there. Mr. Myers, I was very fortunate to spend a whole day with you and the Gresham folks, and you took me around, and I appreciate your passion for the rural area and wanting to keep it that way. But what I also heard is that the willing to take a look at the way times have changed and to want to work with the applicant. And so I'm going to second Councilmember Hume's motion because I don't think we had a second yet, and I'm in favor of denying it, but also moving forward and having our staff and the applicant work together.
I think the other issue that hasn't really been looked at either, there's, across the street, I think there's 2 vacant corners in the county that do not have these kind of restrictions. So I mean, I think we're trying to shoehorn something in, and there's other areas, even on the Elk Grove side, as you go west, that there's commercial properties that are available.
So actually, to that, if I could ask Mr. Cooley if you could speak to these other properties, maybe, if you guys take a look at those as well?
Yeah, we get asked that question a lot about the other 2 corners in this intersection. There's a vacant commercial property behind, just west of the CVS pharmacy, which is owned by CVS, which there is discussions of an application coming forward. Then there's the county property, which is on the northwest corner. And a little background on that property, some of you may be familiar with Cobra Properties, which was Abe Abizadi,
yeah,
a developer from Roseville, earlier 2000s, who, that property has been tied up in litigation of ownership with the bank for a number of years, and Mr. Abizadi is in prison currently for bank fraud, and so other developers have tried to make a run at that property over the years, and given the legal morass that the property is under, is slowed development on that site. But having said that, over time, that property will develop. Some of the tenants that we've spoke to, some of the national tenants, as they analyze this intersection, there's market demand today and in the future for full development of all 3 corners. There's a residential development on the northeast corner, which is built out, but in the future, just to address Mr. Detrick's comments, there is sufficient traffic and there will be sufficient traffic for ultimate development of all 3 of those corners. And so, you know, again, I think it does speak to more of this comprehensive look for how this corner should operate and what the feathering, if you will, of land uses to the south and to the east to really protect that rural area, but still recognizing that life goes on, traffic increases, the city grows, and there is demand for these services. The only question I just had before you move forward and on a motion here is, maybe you could give some specificity to what this workshop or planning process might look like, and is there also the possibility to, and I know staff is pressed with the general plan update, but to parallel track this process with the general plan, again, just to give some degree of some certainty when this process might end, because again, we do have some limitations on our control of the property. So that's the only thing that I would interject as you move forward towards a motion and ultimately a vote here this evening. So, thank you.
Well, you know, Mr. Cooley, I just wanted to also add, we had a conversation about this, and you know, I'm thinking along the lines of maybe 10 years down the line, 10, 15 years, but I do agree with you. Eventually, we have commercial on the other side, and my prediction is that it will probably develop. My only concern here is Mr. Myers and the association, they have a valid interest and they have valid points, and so I would agree along the lines of working in conjunction with them to come up with something. My thought here is, you know, more in-depth discussion with them.
Sure.
And you know, I know you've been working very hard on that, but you know, obviously there are some people who feel that they haven't connected with you yet. So I would encourage that.
And it's early on. We don't. I mean, the site plan that's in your packet is conceptual. I mean, there's still decisions of whether or not Calvine's going to be 4 lanes or 6 lanes to the east. And so, again, I think based on the direction we hear this evening, you know, we'll roll up our sleeves tomorrow and begin working with Gresham and the Sheldon Community Association on what that's going to look like. But again, if you want to add a little meat to the bones to what that process looks like, that would be helpful, I think, so we can have some direction to talk to staff about forthcoming.
Well, I'd like to give you that crystal ball, but that presupposes a particular discussion. I mean, I think we're engaging the community to discuss what's appropriate. Unfortunately, the answer may be nothing, right?
Sure.
So
And I recognize
I gave you a timeline of of when this process would play out, but I certainly can't tell you what the outcome at the end is going to be.
No one can.
So it's up to a business decision. I mean, the only thing you have going for you is if you opt not to take down the property, they certainly don't have another suitor that's going to be any more successful at getting their wishes put in, right? So if they were to sell it for continued residential use would be their only way of selling the property. And you might relay that to them, is that maybe they partner with you in patience.
And again, we wouldn't want to presume the outcome of this discussion. I think we're happy to have the discussion and move forward, so I understand very clearly what you're saying.
Well, and intuitively, I think Councilman Dedrick mentioned it too. Who pays for it? If it's a city-driven process, even money aside, you have resources allocated for the general plan update. So how would we be able to staff that? Those are questions that come to mind too. And then in which case that may take the time frame out longer than what an option you might want to carry. So the other option is, if you were to, with Mr. Myers, do your own community outreach, and that's a risk, of course, if you came back with your own independent application somewhere down the line. That's, obviously it's a risk for this council type of decision. So I'm just brainstorming up here.
Well, in the original process, when we met with staff last fall, was to go through these two engagements with the Planning Commission, the council, and to get this kind of direction that we're hearing this evening. It'd be on us as the applicant to put together a full flushed out application, obviously working with the community on that application, what that would look like, and then go back through the process for the general plan amendment and the rezone independent of the general plan update. So that was the original path that was laid out by staff, and from what I'm hearing, it sounds like that's potentially an option, for lack of a better word, that we could follow to come back to you and engage the community with something. But what I'm also hearing is that beyond our 2 acres, that the discussion should look at some broader boundaries, so that, again, somebody's not back here in front of you in a couple of years saying, well, give me 2 more acres and 2 more acres, something more comprehensive.
My own personal feeling is, there's enough with the Sheldon Inn, I don't want to call them issues, but the differences of opinion about the Sheldon Inn. I think that, coupled with, your desire to come in, there seems to be a desire, and enough that warrants a conversation, but I think it should be done in a comprehensive manner. So I think there's opportunity for a conversation here. I just don't think it's going to fit within any timeline you have in mind.
And a suggestion might be we can sit down with staff following the meeting here and figure out what that process looks like, and come up with a course of action in conjunction with the community that gives us a process to move forward here. And again, I think independently we'll look and see how that works with our business needs and timelines, and see if they mirror up. So.
Well, and I think a sort of a quick straw poll, if you will. You utilize Mr. Meyer's contacts. He's obviously reasonable and willing to engage in the conversation, and you just float it out there, or even receptive to discussing it. It may come back a resounding no.
No, we're not. I think you didn't get my point earlier. Can I come back to the?
Come on up, please.
Our fundamental point is that discussion of what needs to be done with an area should be divorced from our consideration of a particular project.
Agreed.
Okay, so we'll be perfectly happy to discuss, with the staff and with everybody, okay, what should be done on that area. That's absolutely no problem. That's what we want. It would be wrong, however, to ask us to go sit down with an applicant and say, well, let's do this as an output of an applicant. That's putting the cart before the horse. We think that's the wrong way to do it, and we're not willing to do that. We'd be delighted to work with any applicant if you made a decision that this area should be changed and developed. We'd be delighted to work with any applicant after that decision is made. But we don't want to work with an applicant to get to that. That needs to be divorced.
That's not what I was suggesting.
No, I thought I heard that from other up here. I just want to be really clear.
My suggestion is that through your resources, a fairly quick straw poll could be done whether or not there's even an appetite to envision a change for this corner of the rural area. right?
We could, I don't, yeah. My view of it is that there probably is not an appetite because nobody's thought about it. Okay, I don't think, the question is, when you have, look at an area and bring it out, then people have to think about it for the first time. But they need to think about it in a context. So you would have, somebody from planning get up and say, we looked at this from this standpoint. Here are the pros. Here are some cons. Here are some open questions and this kind of a thing. And we all sit there kind of that. Then people kind of have a chance to look at it and respond in an informed and intelligent way. The problem is if you just kind of throw it out there, say, well, somebody wants to build some places that okay, and you probably get an automatic no, is my guess. So if the idea of having a process such as we did before was you actually flat that out there, and people had a chance to say, is this a good idea in principle? You're really looking in principle. And then they looked in principle, they said, yeah, that's okay, but we're going to have some noise problems here, and we got to have these problems. Could we put these particular riders, into the overlay, okay? Which is exactly what happened. And then people, interested in business, and people from the community, and people from the city, we all sat down together, but we all looked at it not as an outgrowth of a particular application, but as a principle. Is this good planning for the area, or is it not? And then if it is, we go ahead with it. And I found that people were pretty flexible once they got the, once they sort of got the information and had a chance to think about it. They still divided. We had people on all sides, as you would in something like that. But on the whole, the people came together and said, yeah, let's go with this. Okay, but it depended on having a really informed discussion, not just having sort of a straw poll.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Awesome. Got a motion, got a second.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
I'm not sure if it would be Darren or Christopher that'd be best to answer, but if you did just a shotgun estimate of if you were to do public outreach and a rural evaluation of this, what would the cost be in typical timeline?
Time frame, I think, as a good point of reference, because we've done a lot of outreach, obviously, with the rural area folks over the last decade plus. Those outreach efforts, as Mr. Myers described, you do have multiple touch points that you want to have. So we're looking at several months' worth of work just in terms of the outreach. I think leading into that, there's some questions on the economic side that I would anticipate many of the rural residents having. So we'd probably want to do some economic analysis ahead of time, which means getting a consultant on board, to do that. I haven't done one of those in a while, so we're probably talking somewhere in the neighborhood of between 20 and 45,000 or something. We'd have to get some quotes from a number of qualified firms to look at that and get a better sense of it. But this would definitely be a multi-month process, maybe upwards of 9 months.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. We ready? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Oppose?
No?
Abstention? Okay, next item.
Takes us to item 9.3, which is a public hearing to consider consolidated general plan amendment for the Treasure Homes 2 and Tuscan Ridge South 2 projects.
Mr. Mayor, I'd be willing to forego a staff report, given that this is basically the cleanup of an item we've previously voted upon.
Okay, I'm fine with that.
Concur.
All right. Thank you for the presentation. I want to declare public hearing open. I want to open public comment, and seeing that no members of the public sign up to speak, I want to close. I want to declare public hearing closed. Council deliberation and direction.
Move staff recommendation.
Got a motion? Got a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Oppose? Abstention? Next item.
Next item is item 9.4, which is actually 4 public hearings for 3 projects, which are annexing the 44th Annexation into Community Facilities District, or CFD 2003-2 for police services, Annexation 49 for CFD 2006-1 for maintenance services, 35th Annexation to Street Maintenance District 1, Zone 3X, and the 22nd Annexation to Stormwater Drainage Fee Zone 2.
Mr. Mayor, I'd really like to hear staff's presentation on this.
I would too.
But given that we just cut Matt off at the knees, we probably should.
Thank you.
We have a consensus on this then? Waive staff's report. Thank you for the presentation. Want to declare a public hearing open for CFD 2003-2. Want to open public comment, seeing that no members of the public signed up to speak. Want to close public comment and declare public hearing for 2003-2 close. Motion A1.
Motion A1.
Got a motion?
Second.
Got a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstention? Ballot tabulation, please.
Of 365 possible votes, 365 affirmative votes were cast authorizing the city of Elk Grove to levy a special tax at the rate apportioned and described. The measure passes with more than 2/3 of all votes cast in the election in favor of the measure. Resolution declaring the results of the elections available for council consideration.
Okay, motion A2.
Motion A2.
Second.
Got a motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Right, motion A3.
Motion A3, introduce and waive full reading by substitution of title only, an ordinance levying and apportioning the special tax and territory annexed to Community Facilities District Number 2003-2 Police Services, annexation number 44, and amending Elk Grove Municipal Code Section 3.18.010.
Okay, got a motion?
Second.
Got a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, abstention. All right, second public hearing, CFD 2006-1. Want to declare public hearing open for CFD 2006-1. And want to open public comment, seeing that no members of the public signed up to speak. Want to close public comment. Want to declare public hearing for 2006-1 close. Motion B1.
Motion B1.
Second.
Got a motion? Got a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, abstention. Ballot tabulation, please.
Of 375 possible votes, 373 affirmative votes were cast authorizing the city of Elk Grove to levy a special tax at the rate apportioned and described. The measure passes with more than 2/3 of all votes cast in the election in favor of the measure. Resolution declaring the results of the elections available for council consideration.
Okay, motion B2.
Motion B2.
Got a motion?
Second.
Got a second? All in favor? Aye,
Aye.
opposed, abstention. All right, motion B3.
Motion B3, introduce and waive the full reading by substitution of title only and ordinance levying and apportioning the special tax and territory annexed to Community Facilities District Number 2006-1 Maintenance Services, annexation number 49, and amending Elk Grove Municipal Code Section 3.19.010.
Second.
Okay, got a motion, got a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, abstention. All right, third public hearing, SMD Zone 3X. I want to declare public hearing for SMD 3X open. And want to open public comment. So no members of the public sign up to speak. Want to close public comment. Declare public hearing for SMD 3X close. Ballot tabulation, please, Mr. Clerk.
There is no majority protest of 365 possible votes weighted according to the proportional financial obligation for each equivalent dwelling unit. 365 affirmative votes were returned. Ballot approves the proposed assessment and the proposed inflation adjustment limit described for the parcels identified in the ballot. Resolution determining the levy assessments in the district is available for council consideration.
Motion B3.
Second.
Got a motion, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, abstention. All right, fourth public hearing, SWD Annex 22. Want to declare public hearing open for SWDF Annex 22. And want to open public comment, seeing that no members of the public sign up to speak. Want to close public comment and declare the public hearing for SWD Annex 22 close. Tabulation, please, Mr. Clerk.
And again, there is no majority protest of 10 possible votes weighted according to the proportional financial obligation for each equivalent dwelling unit or non-residential acre. 8 affirmative votes were returned. Ballot approves the proposed assessment and the proposed inflation adjustment limit described for the parcels identified in the ballot. Resolution determining the levy assessments in the districts available for council consideration.
Move that resolution.
Okay, got a motion?
Second.
Got a second? All in favor? Aye, opposed, abstention. Next item.
That'll take us to section 10, our regular agenda action items and recommendations, starting with item 10.1, which is to receive information on development of a bike share program for the city of Elk Grove and provide direction as appropriate.
Hey, Mike.
Well, good evening, Vice Mayor, members of the City Council, and formerly Mayor Lee, who is just heading out the door. Mike Costa, Transit System Manager for the City of Elk Grove. Back in April of 2017, the City Council directed staff to research and look into the potential for a bike share program here at the City of Elk Grove. Along that same time frame, the Sacramento Area Council of Governments, known as SACOG, was launching a pilot program known as the Tower Bridge Bike Share Program in the cities of Sacramento and West Sacramento. Mainly that program was concentrated at the time along the waterfront district of West Sacramento, as well as different parts of downtown and midtown in the core of Sacramento. What is bike share? Bike share essentially is a system by which users or members of the public can rent a bike. Typically, they do it for short-term travel, point A to point B travel, looking at typically getting charged as well to use the bike during their duration of the usage of the bike. And there's several different instances of bike shares found throughout the United States, in larger cities, in urban areas, in college communities, in some suburban communities near transit center hubs, university campuses, or corporate campuses is where staff has seen many examples of different types of bike share programs. Of those many different types of bike share programs, there's two kind of basic concepts or basic models behind a bike share program. One is a more expensive, kind of larger scale approach found in larger urban areas known as a dock-based model. That is seen in the picture to your left. Actually, that's a picture from a system in South Beach, Miami. And there's a picture from New York in your staff report. Essentially, those require stations and hubs to be located throughout cities. Those hubs are where the bikes actually connect to. They're specialized hubs where people can go and unlock the bikes, and then they would have to return it to those hubs. The second type of model is a dockless model. And within the dockless model, there's kind of two different sub-model programs to the dockless program. One is where bike share vendors, some of them have bikes where you have a locking mechanism on the bike where it can lock to an existing bike rack or an existing pole or an existing utility that could attach the lock to. The second type of dockless model that is also out there is a system by which the bike self-locks to itself. So it doesn't require any sort of attachment whatsoever to a bike rack or any other stationary device. And essentially the bikes could be left in any location. The two pictures that you see actually to the right illustrate kind of examples of those dockless models, one being Spin, which is a system that kind of self-locks in place, which you can see with the orange bikes, and the other one is a program by Social Bicycles, which is a system, again, that can lock to an existing bike rack. So what's happening currently in the Sacramento region with bike share? As I mentioned before, the city of Sacramento, West Sacramento, and actually now the city of Davis are working with the Sacramento Area Council of Governments to roll out full-scale launch of the Tower Bridge pilot program in the end of this summer. They're looking at 900 bikes. Some of those bikes are actually going to be electric assist bikes as well. But that is currently going on right now, spearheaded by the Sacramento Area Council of Governments through their pilot program. The second thing that happened actually recently, and Elk Grove was kind of involved in these discussions from a staff level, is through the 50 Corridor TMA, they were exploring a bike share program in the cities of Rancho Cordova and Folsom with a vendor called Lime Bike. That program essentially was designed to roll out in April and May. Elk Grove was looking at that very closely because we were looking at the possibility of maybe partnering at the launch of that program with this vendor. However, those efforts were suspended, and mainly because in the third column, back in March of 2018, the city of Sacramento passed a ordinance regulating bike share. And out of that ordinance came two very specific things that kind of changed the dynamics a little bit to the bike share vendors that were looking at this region. One of the items in the ordinance required a permit for any bike share program to operate within the city of Sacramento. That permit came at a certain expense. The other thing that came out of that ordinance was that any bike share program that would operate in the city of Sacramento would have to be able to lock to an existing bike rack. So essentially models such as Lime Bike, such as Spin, that have self-locking mechanisms that could be parked anywhere, those were essentially prohibited under the city of Sacramento's ordinance that was enacted in March of 2018. This essentially caused some of the vendors like Lime Bike to suspend their efforts because they believed that if they couldn't get into the city of Sacramento, that their program may not be sustainable in the suburban communities alone, like Folsom, Rancho Cordova, and Elk Grove. To date, we have not heard yet back from Lime Bike to see if they have worked out a way that they could operate in the region, but they did suspend their efforts back in April. Or, excuse me, back at the end of March, actually. So what would a program look like in Elk Grove? We're here actually today to seek council's direction to look at kind of what staff has seen so far and then provide staff with direction on what we can do moving forward. We have reached out to the Sacramento Area Council of Governments regarding their Tower Bridge program, and actually currently they're not looking at expanding into the suburban communities at this time. The effort is being focused on the cities of Sacramento, West Sacramento, and actually the city of Davis near the university campus. We also looked at, as I mentioned before, a program with Lime Bike along with cities of Folsom and Rancho Cordova. However, because of the recent ordinance, Lime Bike has suspended their effort to launch in this region, and they are seeing what will happen with this ordinance as it continues. The other two programs that the city looked at were with two other vendors, each kind of representing a different model of bike share. Both had a cost associated with operating in the city of Elk Grove. One program, through a vendor called Gotcha, was looking at operating about 30 bikes here in the city of Elk Grove. It would be a smaller program that could be focused maybe in a certain area of our city, say our employment areas. And they would have to, their program bike essentially uses the same model that the program in Sacramento uses, where the bikes lock to existing racks. The second program, which we reached out to and were able to kind of get interest from, is Spin. Spin looked at the community, and initially they were looking at a free launch in our community similar to Lime Bike. However, after running kind of their program models, they determined that it would require a subsidization from the city around the cost of about $50,000 to cover kind of all their costs to launch within the city of Elk Grove. Again, their model would be launched kind of on a holistic, whole-scale approach throughout the city, using a larger number of bikes, and the bikes would be essentially freestanding self-locking bikes, so they could be parked anywhere. Both vendors required that a pilot launch program would be at least a year here at the city of Elk Grove. We did ask if something shorter could be done, but they did say they wanted a year's worth of a pilot program. Some of the concerns, as I mentioned a little bit before, regarding kind of bike share that we've seen is that in our efforts in looking at kind of all the research that we've done, staff looked first and foremost to see if we could get any program for free. We have heard of larger scale programs, larger cities getting bike share programs for free. However, in our case, the vendors that we were able to get interest from did explain to us that they required cost subsidization. Or in some cases, we did reach out to a total of 6 different vendors, 2 of which we did get full responses from. The other one said at this time they weren't able to operate, or they weren't focusing and targeting their efforts in suburban communities of our scale at this time. The second thing that we looked at in terms of the types of programs is we did look at the different programs in regards to the dockless systems mainly, and what the different types of dockless systems mean, whether or not the bike's parked and actually locked to an existing rack, or if the bikes were able to self-lock in place. Now, some of the bike share programs that kind of self-locked and can be parked anywhere, we have seen documented cases in different jurisdictions where some of those bikes have become in potential public nuisance situation, where the bikes are parked in areas that have to be constantly relocated either by the vendor or by staff of that jurisdiction. The last thing that we were looking at is staff resources, and looking at essentially if we were to go with a certain type of vendor, what type of resources would it require from staff? If we went with some vendors that maybe had a smaller scale program, it might not require as much staff resource for enforcement, monitoring of contract, monitoring of where the bikes are going, if they become a nuisance and whatnot. Looking at fiscal impacts, as I mentioned before, the 2 vendors that did express interest were looking at about a $40,000 to $50,000 cost just for the vendor alone. This would not include potential additional staff resources that could be needed to monitor or enforce the contract. And the funding would actually have to come from the city's general fund, which could be programmed in next year's budget. So with all of that research, essentially we're at a point where staff requires kind of some additional direction from City Council, looking at kind of these 4 different questions of what type of program would the city want to see? Would the city want to wait to see what happens with the Tower Bridge program? Or would we want to implement a bike share program? And if so, what would that bike share program look like? Would it be a smaller scale bike share program that could be implemented in a localized or kind of focused area, or would it be a large scale city program? The other thing is, what kind of costs would the City Council be willing to consider for a bike share program, considering that we haven't been able to find a vendor yet that did not require subsidy of some sort. And lastly, if we were to look at a bike share program model, what are council's thoughts about what type of program, in terms of if it is a system that would lock in place, meaning that the bikes could be parked anywhere throughout the city, or would it be a system that council would want to see looking like similar to what SACOG has, where the bikes have to lock to an existing rack? And with that, I am concluded with the presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions? Vice Mayor.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks for keeping on this for so long. I was wondering if you, in regards to the nuisance of bikes. Have you been able to talk to cities like Washington DC or Baltimore? I believe when we were back there, I think they're on their 4th bike share company in the city, and just seeing how they manage it and what their nuisance issues are.
We haven't really approached the larger cities in some areas because a lot of the larger cities have the dock-based systems, which are typically the hub models that you saw kind of in the earlier slides. If we were to go in Elk Grove, I mean, we looked at what kind of cost-effective resources we could provide, and one of the things that came out of that is that those dock-based models in the larger cities, New York, Washington, San Francisco, LA, those required a significant amount of capital startup costs. So in terms of reaching out to those cities, we focused a little more efforts on the dockless systems that could either attach to existing bikes or self-lock in place. So no, we didn't specifically talk to them about management.
Okay, got it, thank you.
Questions? Mike, I do have a question. You know, all the cities that I've seen, these share bikes are urban area type. Have you found any city to be comparable to Elk Grove that's suburbia?
There were some small communities that were attached to larger metro areas. I know that there was one in Aurora, Colorado, which is a kind of a suburb community of the Denver area. However, typically what we've seen in those projects is they're centered around a heavier transportation service, like a transit-oriented development or a transit hub. The other models that we saw that were smaller scale models were typically inclusive in university communities or something with a college campus of that nature in the community, as well as a tourist community. I know that Gotcha operates a program in Charleston, South Carolina. They're a relatively smaller community, but they do have kind of that tourist element. In terms of a community that is strictly suburban, we haven't quite seen that. I think some of the concerns that the vendors expressed to us was, especially when the city of Sacramento enacted their ordinance back in March, Lime Bike, who we were talking to at the time, specifically said, we were relying upon the ability to expand into Sacramento, which is why we were considering these suburban communities. And now that they felt they couldn't expand into Sacramento, they had a concern that their model wasn't quite sustainable in the suburban communities alone. And that's kind of a similar story we actually heard to Spin. Initially, they came to us with a free proposal as well. After looking at our community further, they identified at that time too that they would require a cost subsidy to offset some of their operating costs that they saw weren't the same in the suburban model of Elk Grove as it would be in, say, a larger urban area. So that's kind of what we've heard from the vendors, and that's what we've seen operate in kind of different communities, is where they had to have kind of the element of attractions such as a denser residential base or maybe a mixed of uses and more of an attraction factor like a university or a downtown area or some sort. So that's the models we've seen. It's not to say that the vendors weren't interested in looking at us, but they did express those concerns.
So it sounds like their guesstimate is not going to make any money and they need to be subsidized.
At this time.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions?
Kind of sounds like the ice rink that we went through a while back.
The what?
The ice rink.
That was fun.
Anything else? Okay.
Are we just going on to council deliberation? I see that there's nobody
It's just-
signed up for speaking.
There are no speakers,
Oh,
so let's
okay.
open and close
So-
public comment, and let's go back, let's go straight to deliberation.
Okay, so if I could open this up, thanks, Mike. Because we always saw this originally at SACOG, and we're still trying to get this off the ground. So I do believe, though, that while it won't work city-wide in these suburban areas, I believe we should be innovative and don't be afraid to try things out. And we fail quick and move on. But, you know, that's kind of what being on the front end or being pioneering on some of these things is about. And if maybe not today at this moment in time, but maybe next year after the aquatic center's done, after the civic center's done, I think there'll be points to ride to within the middle of the city from the employment areas to down to the aquatic center areas. Maybe on the east side of town, that area where Old Town is, maybe something on the far west. So I see spots in the city that I think could still be successful. I think the only way we're going to encourage, one way we can encourage more bike ridership in the city is to have more bikes on the road. We have so few right now that we kind of don't give biking a second thought. So, and again, maybe not today, but when we have some of these things built where there's actually more places to ride, I think it's worth the risk to see a small investment, to see what it would do as a pilot project, to see how folks, you know, catch on or not to this type of thing. I think it was before I got on SACOG, so I don't know whether there would have been opportunity for other cities to join into they had a committee to talk about this bike share program that consisted of representatives from West Sacramento, Davis, and Sacramento. So it's no secret or no surprise that you see when you talked about Lime Bike, Folsom and Rancho and Elk Grove is looking to pursue these because there is interest, and I think there's you know, our community could benefit from this type of amenity. So I'll stop there and for others to speak.
Okay. Councilman Hume?
Yeah, I'll agree with the Vice Mayor that at some point there might be, I'll call them attractions, but that's not really the right word, but places of significance within Elk Grove where it might make sense. I don't think we're there today, and I don't think a year-long pilot at a $50,000 cost for 30 bicycles is failing quickly. And I will say this, if we're even going to consider dockless biking, I would encourage everyone to go down to San Diego and see how their landscape is littered with bicycles just left on the side of the road. It's a nuisance, it's an eyesore, and unfortunately, I think really that's the only way this type of a program would make sense in Elk Grove, is somebody could ride from their neighborhood to commercial, to employment, to whatever, and not be limited to, I have to figure out somehow how to get to this shopping center where the dock is, where I can then ride the bike from that dock to another dock. That's not Elk Grove.
Okay. Go ahead. Councilman Detra.
Yeah, I think the concept is good. But I look at the categories that were presented where these are typically used, as, you know, universities, tourist areas, have some type of a reason for people to come there who probably don't live in that city, and then use the bikes to tour the city. Unless somebody were to want to come down to use the bike trails, there's not really destinations, so to speak. I mean, they could ride along Laguna Creek, those kind of things, but I don't think that's going to be a typical draw. I'd wait to see what happens with the Tower Bridge program and kind of get some feedback from that, bring this back in a year and kind of reevaluate it.
I like the concept, like what I've heard earlier, but I will say, as Member Detrick has said, the universities and even downtown Sacramento, it's because that's their means of transportation. Rather than getting in a car, finding parking, fighting traffic, the bike would be a little easier. And I think this would be a good conversation to bring back again later down the line when we have all of those amenities back up again. As far as residential, anybody that's biking in their residential will probably already have a bike, right? So one of the things that I had a chance to try one of these out, and they're like cruisers. They're great for short distances. I would not go more than a mile in these bikes at all, because after that, it's not meant to be able to travel in anything more than a mile, I'd say. And so that being said, I like the concept. I think it's great. I think it gets more families and more of us to be out there and being more active, but I don't think it would be something that we can entertain at this time.
Okay, Mike, I'm a big supporter of biking. I'm a product of UC Davis, so I know why it works at UC Davis. But you know, at this point, I think it's pretty indicative that if they want $50,000 up front to come into Elk Grove, that's a sign. You know, it's not going to be feasible. And you know, from what I've seen, all of the shared bikes in the urbanized area, they have destinations in which point A to point B is of significance and of something that needs to be seen. At this point, I'm not in support of it, but I don't want to rule it out, because I can see that if you develop a culture such as Davis, where everyone bikes, that could be very useful. So I will be open to bringing it back in the future, but certainly not at this time.
Yeah, if I can just add to, in addition to biking, you know, the technology is changing so fast on these things, right? So they're off, not only they're talking, you know, electric bikes, but they're off onto scooters. So that is why I talked to the president of Line Bike just yesterday, and so they're focusing on scooters right now, which we saw some of those. Councilman Hume and I saw some of those back east, and those are pretty neat as well. So, Councilman Nguyen, you may not want to bike, but it's not contradicts the exercise thing. But in this flat suburban area where we're a little more spaced apart, those might be attractive to some of our residents. So, but again, when next year when we have more amenities, here's the thing, folks. Elk Grove Boulevard is going to get really crowded, right? When Costco gets built up, when that shopping center gets built up around Costco, when the lifestyle center that Councilman Hume and I are working on the Economic Development Committee, when that all goes forward, there's going to be a lot of fun things to do along Elk Grove Boulevard, coupled with, you know, the aquatic center and et cetera, et cetera. So the folks that are living directly around that area, I think, would benefit greatly by not having to jump in their cars, per se, to get down there in a relatively quick manner. So, again, we'll wait when these things get built, but, you know, I'm glad to hear the council is receptive to this, and maybe just the timing is just a little too early for us. Thanks.
And one thing I would like to add, you know, along what Councilman Hume had said is self-locking dockless. I've seen cities with that, and it is chaos. I would be in favor, you know, and eventually when we review this, I would be in favor of dockless so long as there's a requirement for that bike to be locked into a rack somewhere, so there'll be some control. But it looks like you have enough, right? Okay, all right. Next item.
I'll take us to item 10.2, which is consider appointment of 2 voting members to the Historic Preservation Committee. Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and council members. I am Jason Lindgren, your city clerk. Just a brief preview of this item. We've had a recruitment open for the Historic Preservation Committee since December of 2017. That recruitment's been open, and it's just recent here in spring that we actually had 2 members vacate their positions on the HPC. So our current membership is down to 3 voting members, and we have 1 alternate currently on the HPC designated. What you have tonight is an application's been received from a new applicant. So you have 3 members, you have 2 vacancies, and you currently have an alternate member and an applicant, so you've got 2 people to fill in those vacant seats.
Okay, that makes it easy. So I'll push forward the 2 that we have. That's
Yeah, second.
Bridget Tinder and Daniel Ming, right? Okay, awesome. You know, one other thing I'd like to add is since there's 2 alternate open, can we continue to advertise so that folks who's interested might be able to slot into those alternate positions?
And sorry, I didn't hear the first part, but to keep the recruitment open is
Yeah,
what we
for
would
the
do.
alternate
Indeed,
spots.
we
Yeah.
would keep that recruitment open, and what helps is we do see attrition over the course of the year for other committees, but what happens is that HPC recruitment would just remain on that page, and so it kind of gets refreshed every once in a while in people's minds, but we'll keep it open, and if we get any applications, we'll bring them back for consideration.
Excellent.
Are either one of the candidates here in the audience?
I don't think so. Any candidates here?
Yep,
We do have
he's
one
behind
of
us.
the-
Is that Danimal Ming?
Oh, come on up. We'd like to hear from you. Congratulations.
Mayor, Council, it's a pleasure to be here tonight. My name is Daniel Ming. I'm actually a retired sergeant of police from the city of Oakland. I was there for about 14 years. A lot of people asked me why I was there. I was going to UC Berkeley at the time, living in Oakland, and I thought they needed a few good folks. So I joined up. Now I'm up here with my wife and family, and I want to lead by example and show my daughters, civil involvement with their community is the way to go, and it all starts at home. So I appreciate the opportunity to help serve the city. Thank you.
Thank you for stepping up.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate it. Yeah, appreciate it.
Let us know if we need, or you need anything from us.
Oh, definitely. And if there's anything else I can help the city with, I'm always open. And I am retired, so I have time.
All right, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, I want to adjourn the meeting at 9:38 p.m. Thank you, folks.